Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Rachael Anderson. Rachael Anderson is a 24-year-old female born on January 28, 1994, in Warren, Ohio, to William Bill Anderson and Patricia Trish Anderson. She has a younger brother named John, who was favored by the family. Rachael graduated from Warren Harding High School in 2012, where she was a member of the National Honor Society and played on the soccer and volleyball teams. From a young age, Rachael aspired to become a funeral director, a unique career choice. She moved on to Youngstown State University, focusing on the study of deceased individuals. Her dedication to her studies earned her recognition as one of the top students, along with a scholarship. Following this, she attended the Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science, graduating in 2016 with a Bachelor of Science degree in Mortuary Science. After joining the Ohio Funeral Directors Association, Rachael relocated to Columbus to start her internship at Shaw Davis Funeral Home. She took her role seriously, believing it was her responsibility to help the families of the deceased. As her internship was nearing its conclusion, Rachael hoped to become a permanent employee at the funeral home. However, her dream was suddenly and tragically shattered. Rachael's body was taken to the morgue, and investigators began interviewing the first witnesses. The autopsy on Rachael revealed the details of the brutal assault she suffered that night. She had been both strangled and stabbed. Specifically, she had a cut on her scalp and fractures at the base of her skull. The stab wound entered through the back of her neck and penetrated the left side of her brain, indicating extreme force that caused a portion of her skull to break off. The autopsy also found that she had been strangled with a cord from an electric blanket. The strangulation caused bleeding in her sternoclavicular muscles and eyelids, and the blood vessels in her eyes had burst, leading to noticeable redness. Forensic evidence revealed bruises and red marks on her ankles and wrists, indicating she was alive when the perpetrator tied her up. A DNA sample was discovered on the rope and Rachael's body. The coroner who conducted Rachael's autopsy determined that her death resulted from a stab wound to the head and neck, despite the initial theory suggesting strangulation. After interviewing various employees from Rachael's workplace and her ex-boyfriend, who had an alibi, the police continued to explore different possibilities regarding the attack. Detectives returned to Rachael's apartment to search for evidence or clues about the perpetrator. On the living room floor, they discovered Rachael's purse, which was missing her wallet. 2 weeks after the crime, Rachael's mother found the 9-inch steak knife used to stab her in a box in her apartment. However, the brutal nature of Rachael's torture suggests that the perpetrator was not simply a thief, but a psychopath who enjoyed abusing his power over his victims. Investigators explored various motives, but initially had no suspects. The details of Rachael's death were kept confidential to protect the investigation. Eventually, DNA samples were collected from different parts of Rachael's body and the crime scene. Unfortunately, these samples did not match any samples in the Special Services database. The video footage from street surveillance cameras captured 2 individuals using Rachael's car to drive around the city after her death. During this period, cash was withdrawn from her debit and credit cards. Location data identified a phone number that was in Rachael's apartment between 7:59 p.m. and 9:25 p.m. on January 28, 2018. Analyzing the evidence revealed the caller's whereabouts at various times. Once the account associated with the phone number was identified, investigators found the suspect, 54-year-old Anthony Pardon. He had a criminal history that included multiple rapes, robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Overall, he served 33 years in prison for his crimes. Anthony had a difficult upbringing. He was initially raised by his grandparents and later moved in with his mother. As a child, he was diagnosed with conduct disorder and antisocial personality disorder. In March 1979, at the age of 14, Anthony was briefly committed to the Ohio Youth Commission. By July of the same year, he was placed under court custody and transferred to Franklin County Children's Services. In December, he was again found guilty of making threats, leading to another transfer to the Ohio Youth Commission, where he was placed in foster care. In 1980, Anthony was charged with abuse, involving his foster parents' 15-year-old son. Then, he informed Columbus police that he committed the crime because he was upset after an argument with his girlfriend. As a result, Anthony was convicted as a juvenile. On November 13, 1981, when Anthony was 16, he visited his girlfriend's 39-year-old mother to use the telephone. During this visit, he threatened her with a butcher knife, assaulted her, and stole $100 from her purse. He tied her hands and feet, gagged her, and placed her in the trunk of his car. He drove to Valleydale, where he untied her feet and threw her into the river behind the Valleydale ballroom. When he noticed that the partially clothed she was able to stay afloat, he entered the creek and held her head underwater. Fortunately, a passerby intervened and scared him away, allowing she to survive. Anthony fled the scene before the police arrived and used the money he had stolen from her to buy tennis shoes and jogging clothes. In May 1982, at the age of 17, he had been convicted of other crimes in Franklin and received a prison sentence ranging from 5 to 25 years. While incarcerated, he committed several rule violations, such as possessing a weapon, setting a mattress on fire, and engaging in fights. He ultimately spent more than 24 years in prison for his offenses and was released in November 2006. After his release, Anthony relocated to Georgia and applied for a job using a different name. In 2007, Anthony was charged with forgery papers and convicted in Floyd County, within a 9-year prison sentence. After serving his time, he received 20 years of probation and were required to wear a GPS ankle monitor. He was released from prison in 2017 and returned to Ohio in June of that year. According to an interstate agreement between Ohio and Georgia, he was supervised by the Adult Parole Authority and had to report to the Sheriff's Department every 90 days. The Ohio Adult Parole Authority did not give him a monitor, as the judge had requested. And Anthony was free once more. On August 21, 2017, he was found with a sex worker in his car, and 6 days later, he was caught driving without a license. During that traffic stop, police discovered he had a kitchen knife and a shotgun, but for some unknown reason, or due to police negligence, he was not arrested. Therefore, he is still continuing to commit crimes. CCTV footage captured Rachael's car parked outside a store. A man exited the passenger side of the car and entered the store. The driver was not visible in the footage. This makes the investigation more difficult than ever. However, after visiting the store and speaking with the employees, the police were able to identify the man. He was named Slits. A few days later, Slits was questioned at the police station. He said an adult man passing by approached him and offered to exchange his ex-girlfriend's card for cash. He agreed to this arrangement, which made him a co-conspirator in the Rachael case. Slits confirmed the identity of Anthony and detailed the entire route they took on the evening of January 28, 2018, while trying to cash in Rachael's stolen cards. The issue at hand was to locate and arrest Anthony. On February 9, 2018, after several days of track at Anthony's sister's house, he was successfully apprehended. The 54-year-old, who had a history of crime, faced 9 charges, including burglary, aggravated robbery, kidnapping, rape, and aggravated murder. The trial commenced on February 4, 2020. On the first day of the trial, 4 witnesses provided their testimonies. Among them was Jonathan, a co-worker of Rachael, who found her body. He, along with the manager of Rachael's apartment complex, shared their accounts. The jury also heard testimony from Officer Frank Scani, who was parked outside the apartment when Jonathan discovered the body Rachel's and reviewed the surveillance footage. On February 5th, Rachel's brother, John, and Special Agent Joshua Durst took the stand. Lead Detective Art Hughes testified the following day, on February 6th. On that same day, Anthony expressed dissatisfaction with his attorneys to the judge and requested new representation. He appeared to be deliberately delaying the proceedings. On Monday, February 10th, the prosecutors called a fingerprint expert and other specialists to explain how technology helped determine where Rachel's debit card was used and at the crime scene. Anthony's sister testified that he gave her Rachel's debit card, claiming it belonged to his girlfriend. She later discovered, through news reports, that the card actually belonged to the crime victim, Rachel. The final day of testimony was Tuesday, February 11th. The medical examiner reported finding Anthony's DNA at the scene, while a forensic pathologist and a deputy coroner from the Franklin County office detailed Rachel's injuries. In the courtroom, the final moments of Rachel's life were carefully reconstructed. She celebrated her 24th birthday on January 26th and 27th, 2018. Her brother, John, traveled from Warren to Columbus to visit her. The following day, she and John went to the home of her friend and colleague, Jonathan, where they held a birthday party for she. After a long night of celebration, Rachel and her brother stayed overnight at their friend's house. The next morning, Rachel left for work, leaving her apartment key with her brother. On the 28th, John returned to his hometown and accidentally brought Rachel's house key with her. At around 1 p.m., Rachel texted John, person holding her house keys, to let him know she would come over to pick it up. Rachel talked to her mother around 6:30 p.m. and then went to John's place to get her key. Since her apartment door could only be locked from the outside with a key, she had to leave it open. After stopping for dinner at her favorite restaurant, Rachel arrived back at her apartment around 7:30 p.m. She then left the apartment, and Anthony was waiting for her outside. He kidnapped Rachel, taking her from the ground floor to the top floor. He used force to pin her down, then tying her legs with a hair dryer cord and her hands with a belt and curtain cord. Once she was unable to move, he wrapped a curling iron cord around her wrists to silence her and gagged her. He forced Rachel to provide him with the PIN numbers for her cards. He tortured her and exploited her vulnerability. Ultimately, he strangled her with a cord from an electric blanket. In addition to strangulation, he also caused blunt force trauma and inflicted a stab wound to her head. Afterward, he concealed her body in a closet, leaving her naked from the waist down with the electric blanket cord around her neck and the door handle. Anthony stole her car and used her bank cards at various stores in Columbus to make quick money. The defense did not present any witnesses. The final hearing took place on February 12. Assistant Prosecutor Amy Van Kullen gave the state's argument, outlining the timeline of the crime and telling the jury that Anthony murdered Rachel in cold blood. In his argument, the defense attorney, Larry Thomas, admitted that Anthony used Rachel's cards but said that he was not responsible for the murder. Attorney Larry argued that the state's case was based on mere speculation. He said that DNA evidence and cell phone data were not enough to prove Anthony's involvement in the crime. The jury, consisting of 4 men and 8 women, spent about 6 hours over 2 days discussing the case, before finding him guilty on all charges. The prosecution sought the death penalty because he killed Rachel during a burglary and he had previously been convicted of the attempted murder of a similar woman. They opted for the death penalty instead of seeking clemency because of his extensive criminal history. Prosecutor O.B. Bryan remarked that some individuals cannot follow the law, and Anthony is one of them. The sentencing phase of the trial started on February 18th. The defense aimed to lessen the severity of the punishment by highlighting Anthony's difficult childhood, but this argument was not effective. Prosecutors contended that the negative factors in the case were more significant than any positive ones. Additionally, it was established during the trial that Anthony understood his actions when he assaulted Rachael. Testimonies in Anthony's defense were given by his mother, sister, a psychologist, and his former elementary school teacher. On February 19, Anthony gave a 13-minute speech before the jury, sharing details about his abusive childhood. He shared the struggles he encountered after his release from prison, expressing feelings of hardship and despair. He claimed that the law system let him down and that he received no support. And he attributed his current situation to the failures of the justice system. However, he neither addressed the crime he committed nor offered any apology in his remarks. On February 20th, after 3.5 hours of deliberation, the jury was unable to reach a consensus on whether to recommend the death penalty. Instead, they decided to recommend life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentencing occurred on March 16, 2020. Rachael's mother cried in court when the verdict was announced. Her father issued a sharing his thoughts on the investigation he had witnessed over the past few years. He was shocked to look a dangerous repeat offender making outrageous demands and acting as if he was entitled to something. He also was astonished to see an adult complaining about the system's shortcomings while trying to evade responsibility. Judge McIntosh sentenced Anthony Pardon to 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole, one for aggravated murder and another for violence. Furthermore, he received an additional 63 years for aggravated burglary, kidnapping, aggravated robbery, and several violent offenses. These sentences are to be served one after the other. Rachael's 24th birthday turned into a tragic day. A young woman with a bright future ahead of her had her life unexpectedly cut short. She was finishing up her internship and was on the verge of receiving a promising job offer. Rachael was laid to rest at Pineview Memorial Park, leaving her family and friends struggling to cope with the sudden loss. Every year on January 28, Rachael's family and friends light a candle at home to remember her. Rachael was a lively person with a beautiful smile and a loving heart. She was kind and always willing to help her friends. Throughout her life, she had many interests, but her main focus was her career. Rachael was naturally compassionate, loved dancing, and cherished time spent with family and friends. She had a special love for children and valued her life, which was sadly taken away too soon. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Megan Landowski. Located on the shores of the Chesapeake Bay in Portsmouth, Virginia, is a bustling seaport town that is also home to both the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard. The town's tree-lined streets are home to naval officers and their families. Among them is Navy officer Chris Short, his wife Angela, and 3 stepchildren, Elizabeth, Megan, and Corey. After a year stationed at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, Chris was transferred to a naval hospital in Portsmouth, much to his family's delight. 16-year-old Megan, the eldest of the siblings, was excited to start her new life in Portsmouth. She promptly signed up for dance classes, as she had a strong passion for dance. Megan had a natural ability and quickly excelled in various dance styles, starting with ballet. Her mother, Angela, described Megan as a lovely, friendly, and talented young woman who easily settled into her new school, Woodrow Wilson High School. Megan was a lively and kind person, and that helped her swiftly made friends at her prestigious dance high school. However, she longed to attend a regular high school to be with her neighborhood friends. On Thursday, April 10, 2008, Megan woke up early for school and had a conversation with her mother about an upcoming test. They said their goodbyes, and Megan headed off to class. Unbeknownst to her mother, Angela, this would be the last time she saw her daughter alive. Megan's school day finished earlier than usual, so she headed home. Her mother had asked her to call as soon as she arrived. When Megan got home, she left a voicemail for her mother, telling her all about her day, letting her know she was safe, and saying she loved her. After that, Megan started making herself some lunch. However, the situation took a devastating turn around 4 p.m. that day. Chris, Megan's stepfather, came home to find the front door open. At first, he wasn't too worried, knowing Megan had been reminded to keep it closed. But he planned to remind her again. As he called out her name while walking through the house, he was met with only silence. As he entered the kitchen, he was met with a horrific scene. Megan was lying lifeless on the floor, a victim of murder. Chris later described the scene, saying Megan looked like a porcelain doll, eerily still and staring blankly into space. Local detective Doug Funkhauser was on his way to celebrate his anniversary with his wife when he received a distressing call about the murder of a young girl in town. He rushed to the scene, where he was met with a shocking and disturbing sight. As he neared the house, he noticed blood stains on the door handle. Inside, he found Megan's body on the kitchen floor, partially naked and surrounded by a large pool of blood. She had multiple stab wounds on her back, neck, face, and throat, and her mouth was sealed shut with tape. As a seasoned investigator, Detective Doug had seen many brutal cases, but this one stood out due to the victim's young age. The fact that he had 3 children of his own made him even more determined to catch the perpetrator and bring them to justice. Investigators found no signs that the killer had broken into the house. However, a leaf found inside the house, which matched the bush outside the first-floor window, suggested that the attacker entered through that window. The assault is believed to have started in an upstairs bedroom. Signs of a struggle were evident, with the bed in disarray. On the floor, police found Megan's underwear. An adhesive tape box discovered under the bed was matched to the tape used to restrain Megan's arms and cover her face. Bloodstains on the tape were collected for further analysis. Additionally, pillows, sheets, and blankets from the bed were collected for forensic examination. Further investigation of the bedroom revealed new evidence. Seminal fluid was found on the duvet and in Megan's underwear, indicating that she had been sexually assaulted before being brutally murdered. Downstairs, Megan sustained 43 stab wounds, 11 of which were inflicted after she had already died. Her body was discovered naked from the waist down, with her arms bound behind her back using tape. The forensic team quickly identified a murder weapon when they noticed 2 knives was missing from its holder on the kitchen counter. Later, a knife was found in the sink. It was determined that Megan was first attacked in her room but managed to escape downstairs, where she was fatally assaulted. The perpetrator then moved through the house, leaving footprints behind. After washing their hands in the sink, they left one of the 2 knives used in the murder. The other knife, taken from the kitchen, was found in a nearby storm drain. Detectives urgently needed to catch the killer. They quickly started investigating, thoroughly searching the neighborhood for witnesses who may have seen or heard something suspicious during the crime. However, no one came forward with any relevant information. It seemed the perpetrator had escaped in broad daylight. The town was gripped with fear, as parents worried about their children's safety, and many were too afraid to sleep at night knowing a killer was still at large. After the initial shock of their daughter's murder, Angela and Chris quickly told the police who they suspected was responsible. They accused Robert Hickey, someone they used to know, who had a troubled past, and they were confident in their accusation. When Megan was 16, she was sexually assaulted by Robert Hickey, a Navy colleague of her stepfather Chris. Robert and Chris worked together as technicians and had become close friends. Chris and his family would often invite the Robert over. After being sexually assaulted, Megan became withdrawn and her grades started to slip. Chris noticed the change in her and asked what was wrong, but Megan was hesitant to talk about it at first. Eventually, she opened up to Chris and told him that Robert had been secretly assaulting her. Chris was furious and disgusted. He immediately cut off all ties with the Robert family and reported the incidents. 5 months before her murder, Megan's parents had started legal proceedings against Robert, and a trial was pending. Now, they suspected that Robert had killed Megan to prevent her from testifying against him in court. They thought he was afraid of damaging his reputation and going to prison. Megan had even expressed her fear that Robert would come after her, and sadly, it seemed her fears had come true. Officers went to Robert's home to search for evidence linking him to a murder. Although they didn't find any direct evidence, a later examination of his computer, they discovered he had deleted some data. A deleted file was recovered, containing illicit images of minors, which led to Robert being charged with possessing child pornography. This made him the main suspect in the murder investigation. When questioned about the murder, Robert appeared nervous but claimed he was at the Navy base all day. He denied any involvement and said he didn't leave the base. However, after checking his alibi with colleagues, police found a gap in his timeline, suggesting he could have been suspect. Security footage was checked, but it showed that Robert had not left the base. Despite this, he was still considered a suspect and could not be completely cleared of suspicion. A DNA sample was collected from Robert to compare with the DNA found at the crime scene. However, the results revealed that there was no match, ruling Robert out as Megan's killer. This unexpected outcome left the officers disheartened, as they were now without leads or suspects other. The focus then shifted to Chris, who had discovered Megan's body. After collecting a DNA sample, Chris was quickly cleared as a suspect. Megan's family members, including her younger brother Corey, were also eliminated as suspects. An autopsy showed that Megan was murdered with extreme brutality, described as an overkill. This level of violence indicated that the perpetrator was fueled by intense anger, which raised questions about their motive. Megan was well-liked and didn't appear to have any enemies. It seemed likely that the killer was someone she knew. However, the lack of obvious enemies made it even more puzzling as to who could have committed such a horrific crime. As the investigation continued without identifying any suspects, Megan's parents were faced with the disturbing reality that her case may remain unsolved forever, denying them justice for their daughter. To search new leads, detectives looked into Megan's school life, looking into whether she might have had a secret boyfriend, someone who admired her, or an enemy within her school. They questioned one of Megan's close friends, hoping to gain useful information, but the friend couldn't provide any significant details. The police then spoke with other people from Woodrow Wilson High School who knew Megan. They discovered that she had been in a few romantic relationships, but none of them were serious. Although none of these individuals seemed suspicious, but the police still took DNA samples from these people for further investigation. Forensic experts analyzed DNA evidence from the crime scene to determine the perpetrator's geographical origin. The results suggested that the perpetrator was an African-American male. After 6 months with no significant leads, a classmate provided a list of boys Megan had flirted with. The police reviewed the list and found that all the individuals, except one, had already been interviewed. The exception was 17-year-old Robert Lee Barnes. Megan had met Barnes through a performance arts program at Churchill High School, where they both participated. Megan had told a friend that she thought Barnes had feelings for her, but she didn't feel the same way. Barnes was a talented violinist and a diligent student with no disciplinary issues. He was friends with Megan and had visited her home several times. Her parents described him as polite and kind. When questioned by police, Barnes followed the standard procedure and described Megan as kind. Initially, the police interview with Robert did not raise any suspicions. However, when asked if he would be willing to provide a DNA sample, Robert hesitated, then he refusing. This refusal was unusual, as all of Megan's other classmates had agreed to cooperate. When questioned about his refusal, Robert explained that his mother would not approve of him providing a DNA sample. The police clarified that, as he's 17 years old, Robert did not need his mother's consent. Nevertheless, Robert declined again, leaving the investigators with the feeling that something was not quite right about him. At the end of the interview, Robert was requested to obtain his mother's consent for the DNA sample and to contact the investigators afterward. The next day, Robert requested a meeting with the investigators. When asked if he had obtained his mother's consent, he replied that he had not. However, he offered to provide a DNA sample in the form of the bubble gum he was chewing. He removed the gum from his mouth, placed it in a latex glove, and handed it over to the investigators. Despite the investigators continued to suspect that Robert might be hiding something. Later on, the detective got a call from the lab that was analyzing the bubble gum. The lab asked where the gum had come from. After the detective confirmed that he saw Barnes put the gum into the glove, the lab asked if Barnes was under constant watch. This was surprisingly because the DNA on the gum belonged to a female. It turned out that Barnes had switched the gum he was chewing with a different piece, which he then gave as his sample. On October 23, 2008, Barnes was brought in for questioning again, this time with his mother. The police wanted to confront him with the DNA results. During the interview, after being questioned about the gum, Barnes made a slip of the tongue by saying, "This happened on Thursday." Up to that point, no individual interviewed by police knew the exact date and time of the murder. When questioned about this by the police, Barnes gave a very unreasonable and suspicious explanation. He said that Megan had invited him to her home. Upon arrival, he found her being held at gunpoint by a masked person. According to Barnes, the attacker then pointed the gun at him and forced him to tie Megan up. Barnes further said that he was forced to sexually assault Megan against his will. He then stated that they all went downstairs, where the assailant seized a knife and stabbed Megan. Additionally, Barnes stated that the attacker compelled him to inflict an injury on himself, thereby leaving his blood at the scene. However, Barnes had made up this story to make himself appear as a victim and explain away any evidence that might implicate him. The police were not convinced by his story and do not believe any of his testimony. Police presented Barnes with evidence of footprints found at the scene, noting that only his footprints were present, with no sign of the alleged assailant's footprints. However, before Barnes could respond, his mother interrupted, defending his character and stating that he was a good and innocent kid. However, after taking a DNA sample from Barnes and analyzing it, the results revealed a match between his DNA and DNA evidence from the crime scene, contradicting his claims of innocence. Consequently, Robert Lee Barnes was arrested and charged with the murder of Megan Landowski. Megan's parents were shocked by the news, and they struggled to understand how the quiet boy who rode the school bus with their daughter could commit such a violent act. According to the police investigation, Barnes likely entered the home through a window that afternoon, sexually assaulted Megan in her bedroom, finally brutally killing her. Megan managed to escape downstairs, but Barnes chased after her and stabbed her multiple times with a kitchen knife, even after she had died. He then left the scene and continued with his life as if nothing had happened. Investigators believe that Barnes had become fixated on Megan, who only wanted a friendship. When Megan rejected his advances, Barnes became coercive and violent, ultimately leading to a tragic outcome. In September 2009, Barnes accepted a plea deal that allowed him to avoid being tried as an adult, despite having turned 18. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and aggravated sexual battery. Robert Lee Barnes was sentenced to 42 years in prison and is currently serving his sentence at Red Onion State Prison in Wise County, Virginia. Regardless of whether Barnes was motivated by love, desire, anger, or rejection, nothing justifies his heinous actions. Instead of moving on, Barnes chose a dark path that led to a tragic end. This choice not only took an innocent life but also destroyed his own and hurt the people who Megan's loved ones. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Diogo Goncalves. Diogo Goncalves, born in 1999 in the city of Albura, Portugal, is an only child in a poor but hardworking family. His family made a living mainly from the unstable tourism industry. His parents always considered Diogo a good son. Those who knew him described Diogo as kind, responsible, hardworking, reliable, and very friendly. He enjoyed making friends and was close to his family. Diogo attended high school in his hometown. After graduating, he began studying computer science. To pay for his studies and living expenses, Diogo applied for a job at McDonald's in 2015, at the age of 16. When he was 17, his life suddenly took a major turn when his father suffered a stroke and fell into a vegetative state. That same year, while Diogo and his mother were trying to cope with his father's difficult situation, another tragedy occurred. Diogo's mother, who had always supported him in his studies and upbringing, was involved in a traffic accident. While she was on her way to work at the shopping mall where she worked as a cleaner, a car hit her, dragging her for several meters and causing her to die from her injuries. Although the driver fled, the police identified him and brought him to court. While Diogo awaited the verdict on the perpetrator of his mother's death, he had to move to a medical facility to receive the necessary care. His aunt, concerned about Diogo's situation, invited him to live with her, but the two had a serious disagreement. After a few weeks, they could no longer live together. Diogo told a friend about his situation, and the friend's parents offered him a room in their house in the Albufeira neighborhood. Here, Diogo was close to friends and people who helped him feel at home. Despite his young age, Diogo has shown an excellent ability to handle and overcome difficulties with patience and optimism. In 2017, at the age of 18, Diogo graduated with a degree in computer technology and completed a 6-month internship at Villa Vida Park, a top 5-star hotel. Diogo's abilities impressed the directors, and they offered him a job at the hotel as a technician. In 2018, Diogo decided to accept the offer and left the fast food chain where he had worked for almost a year as a shift manager. He entered a new phase of his life, envisioning a future filled with opportunities that would help him rise above the hardships he had experienced. After working at the company for a while and contemplating brighter days, he decided to buy a car. Diogo got along well with his colleagues, especially a girl he had a crush on, Maria Malvero, a 19-year-old hotel security guard. Maria Malvero was born into a normal family and, like Diogo, has gone through many hardships. Her mother suffered from mental illness, and her father left when she was very young, leaving her never to see him again. Maria, who works in security, became interested in martial arts and started practicing karate. She dreamed of becoming a police officer but was rejected by the academy because of her tattoos. This frustrated her, and she decided to join the SEER Info training course, which specializes in training security guards for the private security sector. Diogo has feelings for Maria and has expressed them openly to her from the beginning, but she does not reciprocate and maintains a cold attitude. Diogo is very fond of Maria, so much so that he turns down an attractive job at the Sheraton hotel chain in Lisbon just because he does not want to be away from her. He often brings her meals while she is on duty. Over time, Diogo and Maria became close, and people around them saw them as a couple, although there was no romantic relationship between them. Maria told Diogo that she did not want a relationship with him because she had just gotten out of a toxic relationship with a naval officer. However, she kept in touch with Diogo, causing him to harbor hopes of a future with her. Diogo did not give up hope and always tried to be close to her and please her. One day, Diogo was devastated when he accidentally saw a video on social media of Maria kissing another girl. Diogo was upset because he thought she should have told him that she didn't like boys, which was why they would never be together. Diogo's best friend, Fabio, tried to reassure him by saying that girls sometimes do that, but Diogo didn't believe him and insisted that Maria had lied to him, which was why she refused to be with him. Despite his disappointment, Diogo and Maria remained friends, and Maria continued to accept his gifts and invitations to dates. Diogo tried to take her home several times, but she always told him that her roommate had a jealous boyfriend and she didn't want to let another man into her apartment. Time passed, and in December 2019, Diogo was informed that he would finally receive compensation for his mother's death, which had occurred 3 years earlier. After receiving the sum of 70,000 euros, the young man decided it was time to buy a house so that he would no longer have to pay rent. Diogo shared the news of his mother's insurance money with Maria. A few weeks later, Maria decided to quit her job at the hotel. She said that she could no longer bear the comments of her colleagues about her alleged relationship with Diogo. Maria also justified it by saying that she wanted to spend more time with her mother, who needed more attention because of her mental illness. At that time, Diogo had no reason to doubt Maria's words. However, later events showed that her decision to quit her job at the hotel was for darker reasons, and that is when the third character in the story, Mariana, 20, appears. She works as a nurse at the hospital and has a stable relationship with Maria. Maria and Mariana live together at Mariana's parents' house, as they are not yet financially stable enough to have their own house where they can enjoy their relationship. This is exactly Maria's plan when she learns about the large amount of money that Diogo will receive. From that moment on, Maria begins to get closer to Diogo. It turns out that Maria has shared information with Mariana, and together they decide to trick Diogo into gaining access to his bank account data and steal the money he received. The problem arises when one day, after being rejected by Maria several times, Maria suddenly tells Diogo that she wants to spend a romantic evening with him. This was truly a gift for Diogo. He couldn't believe his ears. After waiting so long, the thought of being with the girl he loved made him extremely happy. The meeting was set for Friday evening, March 20th, 2020. Diogo was delighted and had no idea why the girl suddenly changed her mind. As soon as Diogo entered, Mariana gave him the orange juice she had brought herself, but the drink contained an unexpected ingredient: 3 ampoules of diazepam, a central nervous system drug with anti-anxiety and sedative effects. Mariana was the one who suggested using this substance, having stolen the drug from the hospital where she worked. Mariana's plan was to anesthetize Diogo, access his bank information, and possibly manipulate his fingers to bypass the phone lock. Mariana is said to have waited in a car outside the house while her friend carried out the plan. She even texted Maria several times to see if the drug was working, as it took longer than she had anticipated. The situation inside the house became increasingly tense. Diogo did not understand what was happening and began to get anxious. Maria then tried to calm him down by promising to dance erotically, but first, she had to tie him to a table. After being in that position for a few minutes, Diogo panicked and asked Maria to let him go, but she became aggressive and began to beat Diogo. Using her martial arts skills, Maria overpowered Diogo, knocked him to the floor, and wrapped her arms around his neck, preventing him from breathing. According to Mariana, Maria then told her to go inside the apartment, and when she entered, she found Diogo lying on the floor. Mariana asked Maria what happened and criticized her for going off plan. The original plan was just to steal the key and take his money. When Diogo was unresponsive, Mariana performed CPR. However, when he regained consciousness, he became very agitated and tried to attack Mariana. In response to Diogo's reaction, Maria overpowered him by grabbing him from behind, throwing him to the floor, and strangling him again. Diogo lost his life at the hands of the girl he loved. His body was found in Maria and Mariana's living room, and soon after, they began their evil plan. They cut off his thumb and index finger to unlock his phone, log into the mobile payment app, and transfer money. This process lasted for several days due to the daily transaction limit at that time. Since Diogo was scheduled to go to work the next day, Maria and Mariana devised a plan to prevent Diogo's coworkers from discovering his absence. Maria and Mariana impersonated Diogo to text one of his coworkers. The colleague received a message from Diogo's number, saying that he would not be able to come to work and needed a replacement. However, this message seemed like an unannounced absence, which was unlike Diogo, who did not like to change shifts, so the message felt strange to the colleague. The colleague then asked Diogo if there was a problem and was told that everything was fine. The conversation with the hotel staff and people close to Diogo continued throughout Friday and part of Saturday, but these messages were increasingly uncharacteristic of him. On Saturday morning, Diogo's boss received a text message saying that he would not be returning to work because he had met a French woman and was moving in with her. This story seemed very strange to the boss because Diogo was a responsible person and would never quit his job so suddenly. In search of answers, the boss started calling Diogo, but he did not answer. He then received another message saying that he was not well enough to talk on the phone. Diogo's boss replied that he could only calm down if they could talk. He wanted to hear his voice and his explanation for what was happening. The reactions of Diogo's relatives to the messages Maria and Mariana sent convinced the girls to change their plans to explain their boyfriend's sudden disappearance. They decided to make it seem as if Diogo had decided to end his life and planned to dismember his body to get rid of the evidence. Maria later claimed that they were inspired by the TV show Dexter, about a forensic scientist who kills criminals and evades justice by removing traces of his crimes by dismembering his victims. After carrying out their evil plot, they stuffed Diogo's body into a trash bag and put it in the trunk of their car. They went to an ATM and shopped at a mall, where their hugs and laughter were captured on security cameras. They then went to a resident's house to begin dismembering the victim. Finally, Maria and Mariana placed Diogo's body in a black bag and put the rest of the body in a container. Meanwhile, at Mariana's parents' house, Diogo's friends launched a campaign to report him missing and contacted the authorities. They had to wait the required 48 hours to officially declare him missing. Maria and Mariana then left the house. Maria drove Diogo's car to the cliffs near the San Vicente Lighthouse in Cabo. Mariana followed Maria in her car. At around 2 p.m. that same day, Mariana threw Diogo's body off the cliff. She then left Diogo's car nearby. They thought that this way they could make it look like Diogo had committed suicide. Maria had no idea that instead of falling into the sea, the body would get stuck on a rock. They then left together in Mariana's car. They drove about 7 kilometers in 12 minutes to the Inferno Dago waterfall in the town of Tavira, where they threw Diogo's remains into the water. Shortly thereafter, Diogo's car was discovered in a parking lot near the Cabo de São Vicente lighthouse. According to multiple sources, 2 laptops were found in the car. Police were called to the scene and conducted a search on both land and sea. As a result, the body of a young man was discovered, partially covered by a black trash bag. At the same time, at another location on the coast, a French couple was stunned to discover Diogo's head. Diogo's hands and feet were also found after a thorough police search. Investigators said the circumstances of Diogo's death were strange. He was brutally murdered despite being a quiet person who did not associate with people of questionable reputation. Investigators could not find any hostile forces against Diogo. The police continued to investigate and soon discovered that Diogo had received a large inheritance after the death of his mother. Through the wire transfer investigation, they discovered that a large sum of money had been transferred from Diogo's account to Maria. Detectives tracked down Maria to find out why Diogo's money had ended up in her hands. Maria tried to convince the police that she had killed Diogo because he had abused her. Maria claimed that was the reason she had left the hotel before the incident. However, when police examined text messages between the victim and Maria, they found this was not true. Maria said that she and Diogo had become close after she left her job. During her first meeting with the police, Maria claimed that she was the only person responsible for planning and carrying out the shooting. Maria insisted that Mariana had nothing to do with the crime. However, Mariana's testimony contradicted Maria's. Mariana explained that Maria said she wanted to rob Diogo of his money and intended to kill him. Mariana said Maria wanted to make him suffer so that he would give her his bank account password. The evidence gathered by investigators was enough to convict Maria and Mariana. Detectives had Diogo's phone records, cell phone records, and ATM surveillance video. Maria and Mariana were arrested on April 1, 2020, and appeared in court in June of that year. The judge followed Maria's account of the events, and Maria pleaded guilty while repeatedly denying Mariana's involvement in the case. She said Diogo's body had been in a suitcase in a car parked in the garage for 2 days, and that's where the remains were dismembered. The judge then asked Mariana where she was when Diogo's body was dismembered. It was notable that the joints of the body were separated with great precision. All eyes in the courtroom were on Mariana, who was also a longtime nurse. Mariana answered all the questions and said that everyone knew she worked at the hospital, so they suspected that she was the one who dismembered the body. She further explained that using the internet, the matter could be cleared up. The judge ordered Maria and Mariana to be detained because this was a serious crime under the law. The crime was committed in a cold, calculated, reckless, and extremely cruel manner. A few months later, the trial took place on February 24, 2021. In her testimony at the trial on February 26, 2021, Maria stated that she initially sought revenge on Diogo for his violent behavior but did not intend to kill him. She admitted that her goal was to humiliate him. Maria also confirmed that her friend had no connection with Diogo and did not know about the murder. Maria argued that her actions were not motivated by Diogo's money. In addition, Maria and Mariana attended the trial together but avoided looking at each other. It was rumored that after their arrest and imprisonment, they ended their relationship. On April 27, 2021, the court delivered its verdict. Maria was found guilty of aggravated murder, complicity in indignity to a corpse, robbery, unlawful access, fraud, carjacking, and illegal possession of a weapon. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison and ordered to pay €265,000 in compensation to Diogo's father. Mariana was acquitted of murder but convicted of desecration of a corpse, complicity, and fraud. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison for these charges. However, she was released because the charges she was convicted of did not require pre-trial detention until the final verdict was delivered. The court determined that Mariana's attempt to revive Diogo showed that she had no intention of killing him. The judge took into account Mariana's confession, in which she accepted full responsibility for her actions. Despite this, the Portuguese public disagreed with the verdict, considering Mariana as guilty as Maria of the crimes against Diogo. After the verdict, Mariana left the court through the back door, where her father, who had attended all the hearings, was waiting for her. Neither Mariana nor her father would speak to reporters. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Adrienne Jones. Adrienne Jessica Jones lived in Mansfield in 1995. At the age of 16, she made a strong impression on the surrounding community with her beauty. Adrienne was known for her hard work in school and her passion for sports, becoming a role model for many. In 1995, Adrienne was a junior at Mansfield High School. From the moment she started studying there, she quickly became a beloved figure. Her friends and teachers admired her kindness, intelligence, and positive spirit. Adrienne was an excellent and ambitious student. She took advanced classes and spent a lot of time studying every day. Her efforts were rewarded with high grades. After graduating from high school, Adrienne planned to become a veterinarian. In addition to her studies, Adrienne is also a talented athlete. She was a member of the women's soccer team and showed impressive skills. However, after an injury, she switched to the women's cross-country team. This shows Adrienne's perseverance and adaptability in both her studies and her sports. The decision to join the cross-country team helped Adrienne maintain an active lifestyle and improve her fitness. She accepted this new challenge and worked hard to improve her fitness. With her determination and dedication, Adrienne quickly became an important member of the team. In addition to her studies and sports activities, Adrienne also worked 20 hours a week at the fast food restaurant Golden Fried Chicken. She loved the attention, especially from teenage boys in Mansfield. A close friend described her as a flirt. Adrienne spent about 2 hours a day carefully applying makeup, always wanting to look perfect. Adrienne was a normal, well-behaved teenager who still tested her parents' boundaries. She had 2 younger brothers and was well protected by her parents. Due to the high crime rate in Mansfield, her parents imposed a curfew after 9 p.m. on weekends to ensure her safety. When Adrienne wanted to go out, such as to an amusement park or the movies, she had to notify her parents and show them her ticket as proof. To prevent her from sneaking out, her father even nailed her bedroom window shut. Although it was not frequent, there were a few times when Adrienne sneaked out in the middle of the night to meet up with friends. On Sunday, December 3, 1995, Adrienne was allowed by her parents to stay up late to talk on the phone with her boyfriend, Tracy Smith. Tracy was away on a family trip for the weekend, but Adrienne was desperate to get in touch with him. While they were talking, another call came in. Adrienne's mother heard her daughter was calling Tracy. When her mother asked who was calling, Adrienne said it was David, her cross-country teammate. Adrienne said David seemed upset about something. The next morning, Adrienne's family woke up as usual to get ready for work. When Adrienne's alarm clock continued to ring in her room, her mother began to worry. She went to check on her and found that Adrienne was disappeared. Her bed was made as if no one had slept in it the night before. Adrienne's mother tried to stay calm when she realized that her 16-year-old daughter was missing. At first, she thought Adrienne might have gone for a morning jog, but she quickly dismissed the idea when she saw that her daughter's running shoes were still in her room. Although Adrienne sometimes snuck out in the middle of the night to meet friends, she had never stayed out all night like this. Concerned for their daughter's safety, Adrienne's parents called the police. However, they had no idea that miles away, a man had just made a horrifying discovery on his farm. At approximately 7 a.m., on Seton Road in Grand Prairie, Texas, about 10 miles from Mansfield, a man discovered something unusual while going to get his mail. He noticed that the gate to his home had been knocked down. Curious, he decided to check and witnessed a horrifying scene. At first, he thought it was the carcass of a dead animal on the road, but as he got closer, he realized it was something much more horrifying. A man discovered the body of a young woman and quickly called the police. When police arrived at the scene, they witnessed a horrifying scene. The young woman had been shot twice, with obvious wounds to her left cheek and forehead. It was clearly a targeted murder. In addition, police discovered the young woman with a severe head injury, along with numerous scratches and bruises on her arms and legs. These injuries may have been caused by her running over the barbed wire fence in front of the farm in a desperate attempt to escape. Police found the teen wearing pajamas, as if she was getting ready for bed before she was murdered. They suspected that the case may be gang-related or drug-related, given the execution-style nature of the murder. After finding the body, Grand Prairie Police quickly sent out a notification to agencies in the area. The notification included basic information about the victim, such as age, height, weight, and other identifying characteristics. The goal was to share information and increase awareness, in the hopes of finding a connection between the victim and missing persons cases reported to other agencies. Mansfield police quickly identified the teen murdered in Grand Prairie as Adrienne. They contacted Grand Prairie police to coordinate the investigation. The next step was to break the sad news to Adrienne's family. Upon hearing the news of her daughter's murder, Adrienne's mother was devastated. Since Mansfield is a small town, news of Adrienne's death quickly spread to Mansfield High School, where she attended. Adrienne's classmates and friends were devastated by the news. Many theories were put forward about the cause of her death, the most common of which was drug use. Some people were also concerned about the possibility of a serial killer on the loose in the community. Her mother reported a phone call between Adrienne and her boyfriend Tracy, and another teenager named David had called at the same time. According to her mother, one of Adrienne's younger brothers heard the sound of a car engine outside the house sometime after midnight. When he looked out, he saw a pickup truck driving away. Police was trying to identify David, who had been in contact with Adrienne on the night of her murder. To gather more information, they approached Adrienne's cross-country coach. The coach said that there was a member of the team named David Graham. However, the coach was surprised to hear that David had called Adrienne, as there had been no previous indication that the two had a relationship. David Graham was a typical American teenager. At the age of 7, after seeing an air show, David decided to become an Air Force pilot and told his father about his dream. Since then, he has worked hard to make his dream come true. At Mansfield High School, David was a popular and well-liked student. He had a natural charm and was always cheerful. Although many girls were interested in him, it was Diane Michelle Zamora, a senior, who pursued David. Diane stood out from the crowd because she shared David's desire to join the military and was actively pursuing her goal. After Adrienne was murdered, the police interviewed David Graham. David admitted to knowing Adrienne since they were both on the cross-country team, but insisted that they were just casual friends. The police asked David if he had been in contact with Adrienne the night she was murdered. David denied it completely, saying that he had been home studying with his girlfriend Diane Zamora that night. The police thoroughly investigated David as a suspect in Adrienne's murder. They contacted Adrienne's friends to find out more information. One of Adrienne's closest friends said that she knew all of Adrienne's secrets, but had never heard Adrienne mention David. Furthermore, when the police checked Adrienne's phone contacts, they did not find David's phone number. This discovery further confirmed that David had nothing to do with Adrienne's murder. So the police eliminated David from the list of suspects. They turned their attention to Tracy Smith, Adrienne's boyfriend. However, the police quickly established that Tracy had a solid alibi. On the night of the murder, he was out of town with his family. In addition, Tracy voluntarily took and passed a lie detector test. This evidence further proved Tracy's innocence in the case. During his interview with the police, Tracy Smith provided important information about Adrienne's murder. He said that on the night of the murder, while talking to Adrienne on the phone, she had told him that someone named Brian had called. Based on this statement, the police investigated and identified Brian as a local teenager whose full name was Brian McMillan. The police believed that Brian might be involved in the case and needed to be further investigated. During the investigation, the police discovered important information about Brian McMillan. They learned that Brian had worked at a pharmacy near the restaurant where Adrienne worked. Brian had developed a crush on Adrienne and frequently visited the restaurant to peek at her. However, Adrienne felt uncomfortable with his constant presence. When the police interviewed Brian about Adrienne's murder, he initially denied any involvement with her. However, Brian later admitted that he knew Adrienne. The police questioned Brian about Adrienne's murder. Brian did not remember talking to Adrienne on the night of her murder. He admitted that he had been drinking that night because he was depressed and lonely. Brian also confessed that he had been at Adrienne's house on the night of the murder. At the end of the interview, the police wanted Brian to take a lie detector test, but Brian's father refused to do so for his son. A week after the police interview, Brian was arrested at home. The police thought carefully and decided to carry a weapon because they suspected Brian might have a gun. They wanted to ensure everyone's safety during the arrest. Brian was charged with Adrienne's murder. However, many of his friends spoke out in his support, describing him as a gentle person with no violent tendencies. This created a contradiction between the police's accusations and the comments of those who knew Brian. Brian's father confirmed that his son was home the night Adrienne was murdered. Brian was held in custody for 3 weeks, including Christmas and New Year's, pending further investigation and legal proceedings. During this time, the district attorney's office asked Brian to take a polygraph test, which he passed with flying colors. Due to the lack of evidence linking Brian to Adrienne's murder, the district attorney's office decided to release him. After 9 months of investigating Adrienne's murder, the Mansfield, Texas police made a major breakthrough. The information came from Annapolis, Maryland, where Diane was a student at the Naval Academy. According to reports from officers at the academy, Diane admitted to several classmates that she and her boyfriend David Graham had murdered a girl named Adrienne Jones while they were living in Mansfield, Texas. Police from Mansfield traveled to Annapolis, Maryland to question Diane shortly after receiving the information. During the interview, Diane denied all of her previous confessions. However, the Naval Academy decided to suspend her and send her home while the investigation was ongoing. After failing to get any information from Diane, the police traveled to Colorado Springs, Colorado, to interview David at the Air Force Academy. When questioned, David said he did not understand why Diane would make up the story about killing Adrienne. During the interview, David began to lose his temper and asked to write a statement. He wrote a 4.5-page confession letter detailing how he and his girlfriend Diane planned to kill Adrienne. In the letter, David recounted an incident that occurred in November 1995 when he offered to give Adrienne a ride home. On the way, they stopped in an elementary school parking lot and had sex. David felt extremely remorseful after cheating on his girlfriend Diane. He loved her very much and knew that his actions would hurt her deeply. One night, while the two were studying for the SATs together, they had an argument. Unable to bear the guilt any longer, David decided to confess. He sat down on a chair, sobbed, and admitted to Diane that he had been unfaithful. After David confessed to Diane that he had been unfaithful and had an affair with Adrienne, Diane felt extremely hurt and angry. David's betrayal had broken her heart. In a fit of rage, Diane argued and yelled at David. She even wished he were dead and felt deep hatred for Adrienne. Diane's emotions were so strong that it was difficult for her to understand and accept what had happened. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, David told Diane that he was willing to do anything to save their relationship. David revealed that he and Diane had decided that in order to save their love, they needed to kill someone. They chose Adrienne as their victim. In his confession letter, David recounted that on December 3rd, he called Adrienne and arranged to meet her secretly late at night. He told Adrienne not to tell anyone about the meeting. David had originally planned to meet Adrienne alone, kill her, and dump her body in a lake. However, at 2:30 a.m., David picked Adrienne up in his car, and Diane secretly accompanied him by hiding in the back seat. David drove to a remote location 10 miles from town. Here, he turned off the highway and onto a road called Satan Road. David stopped the car on the side of the road. Adrienne gently adjusted her sitting position, thinking that she and David were about to have a private moment. However, David had silently called Diane out of the trunk of the car. Diane appeared from behind, walked around the front of the car, and approached. As she approached, she came face to face with Adrienne, who was sitting in the passenger seat. Diane attacked Adrienne with a dumbbell from David's exercise equipment. Despite being badly injured, Adrienne escaped through the window of David's car. David and Diane panicked, so David grabbed a 9mm Makarov and chased Adrienne. Due to her head wound, Adrienne did not get far and collapsed in a nearby field. When David caught up, he shot Adrienne twice and returned to the car. After Adrienne died, the first words Diane and David said to each other were, "I love you." After David confessed to killing Adrienne, the police returned to question Diane. Surprisingly, Diane also gave her own confession. Both David and Diane were arrested and charged with premeditated murder. However, both later recanted their initial statements. David claimed that Diane was the real culprit, while Diane accused David of acting alone. In 1998, Diane's trial took place in February of that year. During the trial, several witnesses testified that Diane had shown no remorse for killing Adrienne. After deliberations, the jury returned a verdict on February 17, finding Diane guilty of premeditated murder. As a result of this verdict, Diane was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 40 years. In the same case, David Graham was also convicted of Adrienne's murder and received the same sentence, life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Born on July 16, 1982, Katrina is the youngest of Vicky's 3 children. She has 2 siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda. Katrina's parents separated when she was young, and she lived with her mother in Mason, Illinois, a suburb outside the city. Katrina is a kind, cheerful person who brings joy to those around her. She especially loves the holiday season and enjoys giving humorous gifts to friends and family. Katrina is a devoted church member, always willing to help those in need. Katrina was content with her life, and in her 20s, she met Todd Smith at a bar. Todd was not only charming but also successful. As a financial planner, he was able to run his own business from home. They found that they had a lot in common and their relationship blossomed. One thing that helped their relationship grow was Todd's flexible work schedule, which allowed them to travel extensively together. After 3 years of dating, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. The couple began planning their wedding, deciding to have an intimate ceremony at a local park. Katrina was thrilled at the prospect of their future together, especially since she had fallen in love with Todd's 3 daughters and was excited to be a part of their lives. Katrina's family, including her mother Vicky and siblings Chad and Miranda, found him to be trustworthy and personable. They believed that he would take good care of Katrina. After their marriage, Katrina and Todd began living together in Masney. On October 20, 2012, Katrina called her mother to say that she was house-sitting for a friend. During the conversation, Katrina mentioned that she would be coming to dinner on October 24th and that she had something to share with Vicky, leaving her mother wondering what it could be. Before the conversation ended, Vicky promised to make Katrina's favorite meal: chicken and dumplings, a promise she never kept. On October 23rd, Todd Smith called 911, reporting that his wife Katrina had disappeared. He had been trying to reach her for hours without success. He told police that she was house-sitting for a friend and that the house was empty when he arrived. When Katrina's sister and brother, Miranda and Chad, learned of her disappearance, they were worried. Chad, who was training with the U.S. Army in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help find his sister. That night, a resident called police about an abandoned car near Rock River. After investigating, the police determined that the car belonged to Katrina. They could not find any signs of a fight or anything else that would indicate that she was missing. Vicky's worst fears were confirmed when she learned that Katrina's daughter's car had been found abandoned in a ditch on the side of the road in an unfamiliar area. The situation seemed ominous, and Vicky could not shake the feeling that something terrible had happened to Katrina. If Katrina's car was in that area, then someone must have taken her and left the car there. After the discovery of the car, Katrina's case was officially declared a missing persons case and search efforts were intensified. At 11 p.m. on October 12, Todd was taken to the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department for questioning. During the interview, Todd told police that he last saw his wife, Katrina, on October 22. According to Todd, Katrina had come to their home for a short time to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the following day. While doing laundry, she went to the mall to buy groceries and returned home at 8:30 p.m. After returning home, she left again, as she was house-sitting for a friend, as she told Todd. After Katrina was reported missing, her husband Todd made a heartfelt public appeal, pleading for her safe return. Todd broke down in tears, begging anyone with information about Katrina's disappearance to come forward. Speaking to the media, he urged the public to share any information they had about her whereabouts. As the search for Katrina continued, police and volunteers formed search teams to comb the area. They focused their efforts near the park where Katrina's abandoned car was found, hoping to uncover evidence or clues. Upon arriving in Illinois after military training in Oklahoma, Katrina's brother Chad met a group of people at the park who were eager to help find Katrina. To facilitate the search effort, Chad used his military training to lead the volunteers. He carefully mapped the area, divided the volunteers into teams, and coordinated a thorough investigation. As part of this effort, police used trained dogs to join the search. Katrina's mother, Vicky, created missing person flyers and distributed them throughout town, placing them at gas stations, convenience stores, and lamp posts to notify as many people as possible of her daughter's disappearance. Despite her efforts, Vicky's emotional state due to grief and fear made it difficult for her to participate in the search. Chad, who had supported Todd throughout this time, encouraged him to focus on finding Katrina, reminding him that they needed to stay strong. Later, a police officer discovered several items near Katrina's abandoned car. These items included a wallet, a cell phone, and a towel that appeared to have been used to wipe up blood. It was clear that someone had thrown these items away when they left the car. At that point, the police suspected that something terrible had happened. The items discovered have been sent to the crime lab for further analysis, and police are anxiously awaiting the test results to shed further light on the investigation. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, police investigated her personal life for clues. They wanted to understand every aspect of her life by looking into her relationships, daily routine, and any potential involvement in activities such as gambling or drug use. To gather information, police interviewed Katrina's friends and family members. They all described Katrina as a kind and responsible person. Katrina's family and friends described her as a dedicated and hardworking person. They claimed that she never showed any signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior. Instead, they described her as a devoted wife and a woman of integrity. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, a local woman came forward with a useful piece of information. She claimed to have seen a blue car matching Katrina's parked on a bridge over the Rock River on the night she disappeared. The trunk was open, and someone was kneeling behind it, but the woman could not tell the person's gender or race, preventing her from providing further details. Police had to investigate possible motives and consider whether anyone, including those close to Katrina, wanted to harm her. Despite claims of a happy marriage, Todd became a target of interest, as police know that even seemingly happy relationships can harbor hidden conflicts or secrets. 3 days after searching for Katrina, police examined her cell phone at the crime lab and found vital information. The phone provided a wealth of data, including text messages, incoming and outgoing calls, photos, videos, and her GPS location. This information allowed police to reconstruct a clear picture of Katrina's activities. Notably, they discovered that she was having an affair with a coworker named Guy Gabriel. The relationship began when they met after work one evening. Initially getting along well, it eventually developed into a romantic relationship. A police background check on Guy revealed a troubled past. It revealed a history of domestic violence, and the police suspected him of being involved in Katrina's disappearance. Furthermore, the police discovered text messages sent by Guy to Katrina, pressuring her to leave her husband Todd for him. Guy then became the prime suspect in the case. The police suspected that Guy may have reacted violently after Katrina refused to leave her husband for him. The revelation of Katrina's affair shocked her family and friends, as they believed her marriage to Todd was perfect and happy. No one suspected that Katrina had been having an affair behind Todd's back. When Todd discovered the affair through the police investigation, he was devastated. The news of his wife's affair hit him hard, taking him completely by surprise. Guy was interviewed by police about Katrina's disappearance. During the interview, Guy appeared nervous and admitted to his affair with Katrina, but denied any involvement in her disappearance. He claimed to have been at work the night Katrina went missing. Further investigation uncovered a previous incident that occurred 2 weeks before Katrina went missing. It was reported that during lunchtime at the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked, a black Volkswagen Jetta drove through the parking lot with the sunroof open. The driver, who was wearing a mask, handed out flyers through the sunroof. When employees read the flyers, they found a derogatory statement about Katrina and Guy's relationship. The car quickly sped away, leaving people wondering who the mysterious driver was. Police interviewed Katrina's hairdresser, who shared that Katrina felt threatened and wanted to buy a gun for self-defense. Katrina told her hairdresser that she suspected someone was following her. Police searched Katrina's car at the police garage for evidence. Using a chemical called luminol, which glows when it comes into contact with blood, they found a significant amount of blood in the trunk. On November 9th, 17 days after a firefighter in Rock River discovered a body, and the fire department was called to assist in recovering the body and pulling it from the water. After it was pulled from the water, it was determined that the body was that of a woman. However, because the body was so badly decomposed, identification was difficult. It was unclear whether the body was Katrina's. The body was then taken to the medical examiner's office, where an autopsy was performed to determine the cause of death. To confirm the identity, dental records were sent to a county specialist for analysis. The expert then compared the dental features of the body with those in Katrina's records, confirming that the body was Katrina. Katrina's autopsy revealed that her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. When her family learned that her body had been discovered, they were devastated. The heartbreaking news left them reeling, and it was difficult to accept the full extent of what had happened. Katrina's mother, Vicky, found the news difficult to accept, and the thought of her daughter suffering such a violent end was almost unbearable. Although Guy Gabriel is no longer a suspect, police have sought his perspective on who may have harmed Katrina. Guy reveals that Katrina had mentioned divorce. He believes that Todd's controlling nature may have escalated and led to the tragedy. As police dig deeper into Katrina and Todd's marriage, some disturbing facts come to light. Katrina had told several people that she wanted a divorce from Todd. In addition, police discovered that Katrina had met with a divorce attorney just one day before her disappearance. Contrary to what Katrina claimed, she was not house-sitting at a friend's apartment, but had actually moved out after her split from Todd. Based on the information gathered and interviews conducted, police began to suspect that Todd was behind the mysterious incident at Katrina's workplace. Suspicions were heightened when police discovered that Todd had recently driven a car matching the make and color of the one involved in Katrina's murder, a black VW Jetta. Todd was believed to have been test driving the car at the time of the murder. When police told Katrina's family that Todd was the prime suspect in her case and that he had been arrested, they were shocked and in disbelief. The family had loved and respected Todd as a member of the family, and the news was devastating. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was devastated by the news. The thought that her son-in-law could commit such a heinous crime made her sick. She had always trusted Todd and could not imagine that he would commit such a terrible act. The possibility that Todd was responsible for her daughter's murder never crossed her mind. The police discovered that Todd's investment company was in legal trouble and he was no longer working. As a result, Katrina was the family's sole source of income. Based on this information, the police suspected that if Katrina left Todd, she would take the money with her. This possibility may have motivated Todd to consider killing his wife as a way to gain control of the family's finances. Police obtained a search warrant for Todd and Katrina's home to collect evidence. During the search, they found a baseball bat in the garage that had blood on it, leading police to suspect that it could be the murder weapon. The injuries on Katrina's body supported this theory, as they were consistent with blunt force trauma. To confirm their suspicions, a DNA test was conducted on the bat. The results showed that the blood on the bat belonged to Katrina. Furthermore, police discovered a large, unusually clean area under the car. Upon examination, they discovered that the blood left under the car matched Katrina's DNA profile. 30 days after Katrina's murder, her husband Todd was arrested and charged in connection with her death. Todd's trial began on January 11, 2017. During the trial, the prosecution presented its case against Todd, replaying the events of the night Katrina died. Key evidence included a recent meeting between Katrina and a divorce attorney to discuss her marital problems. The prosecution argued that Katrina's decision to divorce indicated that their relationship was in trouble. According to the prosecution, Katrina had visited Todd's home that day to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the next morning. During the visit, the prosecution claimed that Katrina had made it clear to Todd that she wanted to end their marriage. They argued that this caused Todd to become aggressive and attack Katrina. The prosecution alleged that while Katrina was in the garage, Todd became angry and picked up a baseball bat, beating her to death. After Katrina died, Todd allegedly moved her body into the trunk of her car. Todd then drove Katrina's body to a remote area called Rock River, where he disposed of the body by throwing it off a nearby bridge. After dumping her body, Todd parked his car on the side of the road and walked home. Once home, he cleaned up any evidence of his crime by disposing of Katrina's cell phone and the bloody towels he used to mop the garage floor. Todd Smith was found guilty by a jury and sentenced to 55 years in prison. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Becky Bleefnick. Becky and Tim met while studying at Quincy University. Becky majored in biology and loved tennis. Tim was an excellent football player, popular in school. Those close to Tim commented that he was a cheerful, innocent, and friendly guy. Tim always greeted everyone with a warm hug. With an enthusiastic and friendly personality, Tim was very loved by his friends. On the other hand, Becky's friends described her as a cheerful person, capable of making the surrounding atmosphere bright and positive just by her presence. With her positive energy and bright smile, Becky easily made a good impression on everyone around her. Both Becky and Tim were attractive people, and they seemed to complement each other perfectly. The combination of attractive appearance and compatible personalities made them an ideal couple in the eyes of everyone. 2 years after graduating from Quincy University, Becky and Tim decided to get married and start a new phase in their lives. Being a practical couple, they prioritized saving money over spending. Instead of buying an engagement ring and planning a lavish honeymoon, they decided to use their savings to put a down payment on their first home. Becky had dreamed of becoming a doctor, but ultimately did not pursue this career. Although she loved medicine, Becky felt a stronger calling to motherhood. She longed to experience the joy and happiness of motherhood. This dream came true when she and her husband Tim had 3 sons. Becky loved spending quality time with her children and watching them grow up. As her children grew older, Becky decided to pursue her own dreams. She chose to go back to school to get her nursing degree. On the other hand, Tim has always been a performer, from his time in community theater in Quincy to creating comedic videos on social media. He has the ability to captivate audiences with his humor and charisma. In 2008, Tim decided to challenge himself by entering the competition American Gladiators. Although he did not make it to the final round, he tried his best and made it to the final audition round of the show. In September 2019, Tim took a new opportunity to attract attention and showcase his talent. The production team of the popular TV show Family Feud invited Tim and his family to participate. However, Becky could not join him because she was attending nursing school. Determined to make the most of the opportunity to participate in the show, Tim gathered his family, including his parents and brothers. Family Feud is a television game show where 2 families compete against each other by guessing the most popular answer from a survey of 100 people. Steve Harvey, the famous host of Family Feud, asked Tim, "What do you think is the most popular answer to the question, 'What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?'" Tim, known for his sense of humor, surprised Steve Harvey in the audience with his clever answer. He said, "Honey, I love you, but said I do." This statement was shocking and made the whole studio laugh. Although this answer was not expected, it still won second place on the leaderboard, earning Tim and his family many points. The Bleefnick family competed on Family Feud for 3 episodes, winning a total of $20,000. The prize money was divided equally among the family members. There was one notable exception, however. Tim did not share his reward with his wife, Becky. After many years of marriage, Becky and Tim's relationship began to strain. When Becky decided to become a nurse, Tim strongly objected. He said he was worried about Becky's health because nursing was often a high-stress job. Tim also noticed that Becky often had difficulty controlling her patience and stress when caring for the children. This made him worry about her ability to handle the job of a nurse. However, Becky's friends had a different view of Tim's reaction. They believed that Tim did not want Becky to be independent and free to pursue her own interests. Over time, they noticed that Becky was no longer as happy in the marriage as she had been before. Things were going well for the first 5 years, but then Tim began to act more controlling and manipulative towards Becky. Becky's friends noticed that while Becky was putting a lot of effort into her studies and nursing work, Tim was not contributing his fair share to the household chores. Tim did not participate in cleaning and taking care of their son. Instead, he left Becky to shoulder all the household chores after her long, tiring shifts at the hospital. Becky noticed that their marriage was struggling and wanted to work on this with Tim. She suggested that the 2 of them go to marriage counseling, hoping that this would help them improve the situation and mend their relationship. However, Tim refused this proposal, leaving Becky feeling disappointed. Although Becky tried her best to save their marriage, Tim had other intentions. In January 2012, after 11 years of marriage, Tim suddenly filed for divorce from Becky. This decision shocked Becky, as she had shown determination and effort to maintain the relationship. However, Tim's intentions were clear. He moved out of the house and into a new place on the other side of town. Tim explained that the main reason for his decision to divorce was due to the change in Becky's personality after she became a nurse. He found that her new career had significantly affected her behavior, causing a negative impact on their marriage. The divorce process was stressful. Tim and Becky could not find common ground and their relationship more deteriorated. During the divorce proceedings, Tim and Becky fought over a number of issues, including child custody, property division, and alimony. The situation became so tense that Tim filed for a protective order against Becky. He accused her of stalking and harassing him. Tim cited one specific incident. During an parent-teacher, Becky became aggressive and argued with him. As evidence, Tim provided a cell phone video of Becky banging on his car door outside the school after the conference. Becky, however, had a different view of the situation. She believed that Tim was the one who was harassing her. Becky texted her friends to share her concerns. In the messages, she described multiple instances of Tim's violent behavior, including yelling at her, pushing her in front of the children, and throwing things around the house. Becky sent a text message to a friend, expressing her deep concern about Tim's mental health. She noticed that Tim was becoming more hostile and unpredictable. Recently, a co-worker of Becky's was murdered by her partner, which made her even more fearful for her safety. Becky began to suspect that Tim might harm her, similar to what had happened to her co-worker. As a result, Becky sent a text message to her sister, saying that if anything happened to her, Tim would be the one to pay the most attention. Becky was worried that Tim would use force to gain custody of their child. This message made Becky's sister very worried about her sister's safety. She understood that Becky's fears were justified and that Becky needed immediate help. Out of concern for Becky's safety, her sister convinced her to seek help from the Domestic Violence Support Center. After some consideration, Becky decided to file for a protective order against Tim. After reviewing both Tim and Becky's requests for protective orders, the judge decided not to grant either of them. Instead, the judge ordered them to stay away from each other's homes, except to exchange custody of their children. On February 22, Becky and Tim's 3 sons, ages 12, 10, and 5, stayed overnight at Tim's house. Tim's house is about a mile from where Becky lives. The divorce proceedings between Becky and Tim are expected to be finalized within the next week. The next day, Tim called Becky's father. He explained that he had been unable to reach Becky and that she had not picked up her sons from school as usual. Becky's father, knowing that his daughter was devoted to her children, realized that something serious must have happened that had left Becky unable to perform her duties as a mother. Concerned about Becky's health, her father drove to her house immediately. When he arrived, he entered the house and walked through the rooms, calling Becky's name. Receiving no response, he went upstairs and entered his daughter's bedroom. Inside, he witnessed a horrifying scene: Becky lying motionless in a pool of blood, her body covered in gunshot wounds. Investigators arrived at Becky's house after her father discovered her body in the bathroom. Becky's body was lying on her back, covered in blood and showing no signs of life. Investigators began their investigation by thoroughly inspecting the exterior of the home. After a thorough search, they determined that the suspect had entered the home by forcing open an upstairs window in a child's bedroom. This discovery revealed that the suspect had used a porch chair to gain easy access to the home and onto the roof. Investigators followed the trail they believed the suspect had taken. They headed toward Becky's bedroom, where the door appeared to have been kicked in or forcefully broken. The damage to the bedroom door indicated that the suspect had entered the room, most likely to look for Becky. Evidence indicated that Becky attempted to hide in the bathroom, but the suspect followed and caught up with her. The suspect eventually shot Becky in the bathroom. While examining the crime scene around the bathroom where Becky's body was found, investigators stumbled upon her cell phone. When investigators examined Becky's phone, they found a call to 91126 at 1:11 a.m. This discovery helped them develop a theory about what happened that night. They believe that while being chased by the suspect in her home, Becky tried to call 911 for help, but in a panic, she mistakenly dialed 91126. Before Becky could call 911 again, investigators believe that the suspect grabbed the phone from her. The mistaken call occurred at 1:11 a.m., so they think Becky may have been murdered around that time. However, when police investigated Becky's neighborhood, no one remembered hearing any strange noises at that time. This raised suspicions for investigators. Since Becky had multiple gunshot wounds, it was unlikely that no one heard anything. When investigators thoroughly searched Becky's home, they quickly determined that the murder was not a burglary, as nothing was missing. However, the perpetrator left behind a number of important pieces of evidence. Most notably, a partial shoe print was found near the entrance. This shoe print could help identify the make and model of the suspect's shoes, as well as provide information about the size and shape of their feet. At the scene, investigators found 8 9mm bullet casings and several small pieces of plastic scattered on the floor near Becky's body. Despite the extensive evidence collected, investigators were still unable to come to a definitive conclusion. Therefore, they decided to send the collected evidence to a forensic lab for further analysis. Detectives are investigating whether any of Becky's neighbors had installed security cameras outside their homes. They discovered that a neighbor had installed a camera on the side of their house after their car was broken into a year ago. The camera was facing the neighbor's driveway, which bordered Becky's house. It was set up to detect motion and send an alert to the homeowner. However, on the night of Becky's death, the camera did not capture any important footage. As they investigated further, investigators discovered that on the day of the murder, a man was seen walking down the back path of Becky's house at 1:05 a.m. on the security camera footage. About 48 minutes later, the man was seen walking back in the opposite direction. Becky's neighbor's security camera also recorded a similar incident about a week earlier. On February 14th, footage from the neighbor's security camera showed Becky seeing a dark figure lurking around her house. After discovering this, Becky's neighbor immediately informed her of the news. After the neighbor reported the mysterious stranger, Becky began to feel anxious. Although she had not seen anyone on her house, she had heard noises in her backyard the night before, which frightened her. Police reviewed security camera footage from Becky's neighbors and continued to search the neighborhood for additional footage. They found video from a home near the Quiney bus stop that showed a bicyclist wearing dark clothing moving toward Becky's home. The videos showed a bicyclist wearing dark clothing, matching the description of the mystery person in the footage of Becky's driveway. After analyzing the time of the footage, detectives suspected that the bicyclist was the person in the footage. Although Becky's neighbor's security cameras did not capture the mystery person on the night of her murder, police did stumble upon footage of a bicyclist heading toward Becky's home shortly before and after the incident. The video footage showed a person matching the description of the person lurking in Becky's driveway before she was murdered. While the video was helpful to the investigation, the poor quality of the footage made it difficult to gather details. Detectives were unable to determine the gender or identity of the person in the video due to the graininess of the image. However, they did notice one important detail: the bicycle the person was riding appeared to have no reflectors on its wheels. When Becky was murdered, her sister immediately thought of Tim, Becky's soon-to-be ex-husband, as a possible suspect. She had witnessed their tense divorce and shared this thought with the detectives investigating the case. Based on this information, the police began to consider Tim as the prime suspect. Notably, the murder occurred just a week before Becky and Tim finalized their divorce, making the situation particularly suspicious. During the investigation of Becky's murder, investigators made an important discovery. They found a bicycle without reflectors on its wheels, similar to the one seen on the security camera, just a block away from Tim's house. This discovery raised suspicions about Tim, prompting detectives to seek a search warrant for his home. When police executed the search warrant, Tim was cooperative and respectful. He willingly stood outside the home with the officers while investigators searched his property. On March 13, 2023, Tim was arrested and charged with Becky's murder 2 weeks earlier. When Tim's mugshot was released, Becky's family and friends were shocked by his appearance. Instead of the well-groomed man they knew, they saw a completely different Tim, unkempt and seemingly frail. Many believe that this change reflected the negative impact that the divorce had had on Tim. His unkempt hair and shabby clothes were a clear sign of the deterioration in his previously well-groomed appearance. The divorce was blamed for Tim's declining physical and mental health, according to friends and family. However, Tim explained that he had grown his hair long to take part in a charity campaign to raise awareness for cancer research. A clip from the Family Feud show in which Tim said he wished he had not married his wife when he was arrested for murdering her caused a stir. Many people saw this reaction as an uncanny sign of Tim's true feelings for his wife. Some even suggested it was a warning sign of potential problems in their relationship. Investigators carefully examined Tim's phone and discovered that he had created a fake Facebook account under the name John Smith. During the investigation, they discovered that Tim had been looking to buy a bicycle on Facebook. He was particularly interested in a blue Schwinn without reflectors on the wheels. This was notable because it matched the description of the bike found abandoned near Tim's home, just a block away. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Tim, convicting him was difficult. Tim was held without bail and ordered a speedy trial, requiring the prosecution to bring the case to trial within 90 days of his arrest. However, the prosecution faced a major challenge in convincing a jury of Tim's guilt due to the lack of two key elements that are often considered decisive in criminal cases: a confession and DNA evidence. Without these two elements, proving Tim's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt became very difficult. In prosecuting Tim for his wife's murder, the prosecution faced a major challenge. 3 months after Becky was murdered in their home, Tim appeared in court on May 23, 2023. During the trial, the state presented evidence that investigators had collected at the scene. A key piece of evidence was the plastic debris found around Becky's body. The prosecution claimed that it was from an Aldi grocery bag. They also told the jury that several similar bags were found during a subsequent search of Tim's home. The prosecution alleged that Tim used the Aldi plastic bag as a silencer when he shot his ex-wife multiple times, in order to muffle the sound of the gunfire and avoid detection. They claimed that Tim left DNA on the bags. An expert who testified said it was highly likely that the DNA found on the bags belonged to Tim. Prosecutors presented evidence to the jury about a crowbar found in Tim's basement that they believed could have been used to pry open a window at the victim's home on the night of her murder. However, an expert testified that although there were some slight similarities between the marks on the window and the crowbar, she could not say for certain that the crowbar was used in the crime. The prosecution presented several new pieces of evidence to bolster its case. They presented searches that Tim had conducted on his phone, including how to open a door with a crowbar, how to make a silencer for a homemade pistol, how to clean gunpowder off his hands, and the average response time for Quincy police. An expert was called to testify that she had compared the shell casings found at the crime scene to the shell casings found in Tim's home. She determined that 27 of the shell casings from Tim's home were fired from the same 9mm weapon used in the murder. When investigators searched Tim's home, they did not find Becky's 9mm gun. Tim claimed that he had not seen the gun for months before Becky was killed. During the trial, the defense did not call any witnesses. After a 6-day trial, the jury deliberated for 4 hours before finding Tim guilty. Ultimately, Tim was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Although Tim maintained his innocence and planned to appeal, Becky's family believed the sentence was deserved. Becky's sister spoke to Tim about the consequences of his actions on his sons, emphasizing that his choices had caused them pain. Even though Becky is gone, her sister promises to keep her memory alive in the hearts of her 3 sons. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Cody Johnson. Cody Johnson was born on April 8, 1989, in San Jose, California. He grew up with his mother, Trish Johnson, with whom he had a very close relationship. In 2002, they moved to Kalispell, in northwestern Montana, a small resort town located in the Flathead Valley, between the lake of the same name and Glacier National Park. Cody spent much of his childhood exploring the natural beauty, taking long road trips with friends, and developing a passion for cars. According to friends and family, Cody was down-to-earth, approachable, charismatic, and altruistic. He was always willing to help people when he knew them well. Cody turned his childhood passion for cars into a thriving business. He first started modifying and upgrading cars for racing as a teenager, and later expanded it into a commercial car business. Today, Cody is a custom commercial car builder. He also worked at Nomad Communications with his uncle and a few friends who were also passionate about cars. Cody's life was almost perfect, except for someone to share it with. Cody was looking for a life partner. He had talked to friends about his desire to marry a church girl, and on Halloween 2011, he met Jordan, the woman who would change his life. Jordan Lynn Graham, born in August 1991, has lived in Kalispell with her family since she was a child. She grew up in a religious family and attended First Baptist Church, where she babysat and worked with families. Her life was rooted in faith, and her friends were all churchgoers. She dreamed of becoming a stay-at-home mom and raising a family. Jordan and Cody met on Halloween 2011 and immediately hit it off. Although initially shy, Jordan gradually opened up and started talking to Cody. She shared with him her dream of having a family and her love of nature and the outdoors. Jordan was very interested in Cody, but she was only 20 at the time and not ready for a serious relationship. They dated a few times, but remained friends. Things changed when Cody decided to pursue Jordan more seriously. He joined her church, First Baptist, and began attending her group. Soon, their casual relationship turned into something more, at least for one of them. They started dating officially in November 2011, and Cody was completely smitten with her. He admired her and wanted to be with her 24/7. According to Trish Johnson, after just a few weeks of dating, Cody was certain he wanted to marry Jordan. Even when Jordan told him she wanted to stay a virgin until marriage, he didn't change his mind. However, people close to them noticed that Jordan seemed less infatuated with Cody than before. Some suggested that this could be due to Cody's shyness, but others were concerned about the imbalance in their relationship. They did not show affection in public, did not hold hands, or flirt with each other. Jordan's friends were surprised when she accepted Cody's proposal in December 2012, after a year of dating. Although they thought she was not serious enough for marriage, they were still happy for her. In an Instagram post, Jordan showed off her new ring with the caption, "He proposed. Best early Christmas present ever." The wedding was scheduled for June 29, 2013, and planning began immediately. Cody was heavily involved, as was Kimberly Martinez, Jordan's best friend and maid of honor. Jordan, however, seemed to be the one who was most involved in the preparations for the wedding. She even performed a song that the couple had hired professional songwriter Elizabeth Shea to write. In retrospect, the lyrics seemed rather cold, almost foreboding. However, whenever Kimberly or anyone else mentioned actually marrying Cody, Jordan's mood worsened. She repeatedly asked Kimberly if she was doing the right thing. On the wedding day, she couldn't hide her true feelings about the marriage. She was very nervous, often looking down and seemingly not wanting to make eye contact with her husband during the wedding photos. However, Jordan seemed to calm down well, and by the time it came time for the first dance, she was completely focused on Cody. This happiness didn't last long. The morning after their wedding, Jordan texted her friend from the hotel where they were honeymooning. She hadn't consummated their marriage and had turned her husband down each night since their wedding. She shared her concerns with her friend, saying, "I know he's going to want to be intimate, but I'm really not interested." She also made an excuse, "My period started tonight. I really hope it works because if I'm pressured to do something, I'm going to freak out." It turned out that Jordan was extremely afraid of sex, and a mix of her faith and her true feelings for Cody made her anxious about being intimate with him. The pressure kept building until July 7th, 8 days after their wedding. Cody had planned to go golfing with friends but canceled at the last minute because Jordan had a surprise for him. After attending church and spending some private time at the lake, they joined a few friends for dinner at the local Dairy Queen. Cody went home with Jordan, and that was the last time anyone saw him. Cameron Fredrickson was the first to notice that Cody was missing. Cody was a model employee who always arrived on time before the workday began. However, when Cody still hadn't shown up well into the workday, Cameron decided to visit Cody's new house, which he had bought with Jordan before their wedding. After knocking for some time without a response, Cameron grew concerned and decided to enter the house. Finding no one inside, he began to search for clues about Cody and Jordan's whereabouts. Unfortunately, his search yielded little information. Cameron's concern turned into fear when he discovered Cody's phone in the garage. He immediately realized something was amiss because Cody never went anywhere without his phone, and leaving it behind might indicate that something terrible had occurred. After making several calls, Cameron learned that no one had seen him since the dinner at Dairy Queen at 8:30. He immediately went to the police station to file a missing persons report. And the authorities treated the case seriously from the start. Cameron's distress emphasized the seriousness of the situation. Officer Chaz Zimmerman was among the first to question Cameron. He found it unusual that it was the boss who reported the person missing, rather than the wife. Later that day, Kimberly finally reached Jordan. When she asked about the situation, Jordan explained that she had seen Cody leaving with some friends in a black car with Washington license plates. She mentioned that on their way back from the restaurant, Cody received a phone call that upset him greatly, so she thought it would be best to give him some space. However, later that night, she went to the garage to retrieve her phone charger, which she claimed she had left in their car. On her way back from the car, she received a text from Cody saying he was going to take a ride with some friends visiting from out of town. She informed the police, just as she had told Kimberly, that she didn't know who these friends were. But Cody often mentioned taking his visitors to Glacier Park. She explained to the police that she didn't recognize any of the men and that there had been no argument that night. Regarding Cody's disappearance, Jordan said she assumed he was out joyriding with his friends. When the police asked why she hadn't reported him missing, she said she didn't want to upset him if he returned in a few hours. 48 hours after Cody disappeared, his and Jordan's friends and families gathered at their home, expressing confusion about Cody's behavior. It was unlike him to leave without telling anyone where he was going. Despite this, Jordan insisted on her story until Kimberly challenged her. As the meeting continued, Jordan appeared increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, she became so upset that she threw her wedding ring across the room. While some thought it was a strange reacting mechanism, Kimberly believed something more was happening. She called her friend when she got home. The following day, Jordan was summoned to the station, where the officers questioned her about the inconsistencies in her story. One officer said, "I'm noticing some discrepancies between what you're telling me and the information I've gathered from others." He continued, "I've talked to a few people, and it's crucial for me to know you're being truthful." Jordan responded, I understand. However, the officer insisted, "I believe there's more to it." Sheriff Johnson met with the police that day, carrying Cody's phone records from the day he disappeared. Concerned about her son, she hoped the mysterious person Cody had called would provide clues about his whereabouts. However, it turned out to be a friend from the car community calling to return a tool to Cody. This friend was quickly ruled out as a suspect because he had a strong alibi. His wife was in labor when Cody went missing. With all leads exhausted, the police refocused on Jordan, who had a story that didn't quite make sense. The breakthrough they needed came on July 10th. A mysterious email from Carmentoni 607 arrived, claiming Cody was dead and the search could be called off. The email said, "Hello Jordan, my name is Tony. There is no need to look for Cody anymore. He is gone." Jordan showed her best friend Hannah the email, Jordan face expressionless, and explained what Carmentoni 607 claimed had happened to Cody. Allegedly, he had slipped and fallen off a cliff in Glacier National Park with his mysterious friends. Hannah was almost overwhelmed when she read the message. She urged a lethargic Jordan to report it to the police. "I'm freaking out." "What are you talking about?" Hannah exclaimed. "I read the email, and it says Cody's gone." "Jordan, any reaction?" Jordan wasn't crying at all. "She just showed me the email, and I started shaking. I insisted she go to the police, and eventually, she did. But I was hurrying her, urging her to go instead of just standing there looking at me." Instead of settling the police investigation, the email only increased their paranoia. It seemed suspiciously convenient that an anonymous email would provide the information they desperately needed and suggest ending the search. Detective Corey Clark was most disturbed not by the details of the message but by Jordan's lack of emotion. She seemed unaffected by a message that essentially confirmed her husband's death. After reading the email, for looking for Cody, Jordan decided to visit Glacier National Park. She led a car with her foster brother Michael and her close friend Hannah to the Sun Road, a 30 stretch of narrow winding path leading up to a treacherous mountain overlook. Throughout the trip, Hannah noted that Jordan seemed unusually cheerful. On the way, Jordan waved her hand out the window. They didn't find anything on the first day, but on the second day, Jordan unexpectedly discovered Cody's body. Among all the cliffs and roads, Jordan guided them to this specific one, insisting on her intuition despite many recommendations from Michael and Hannah. At the summit, they parked and began hiking the loop trail. This trail was notably steep and ascended to a 200-foot cliff that provided a view of a deep ravine. Jordan skillfully reached the top, maneuvering past sharp rocks to the cliff's very edge, overlooking the ravine. As she looked down, she tossed a rock and remarked, "I think he's down there." It took a particularly brave FBI agent tying himself to a tree and leaning over the edge, and the aid of several emergency services and a helicopter to confirm and extract the body at the bottom of the ravine. The body belonged to Cody Johnson, a newlywed car enthusiast, businessman, and pillar of the community. The question now was how Cody ended up there, and what did his wife, Jordan, and the mysterious Carmentoni 607 have to do with it? Who were the mysterious out-of-town friends that were with Cody when he fell? These were the questions that hounded the Kalispell Police Department for days to come. According to the coroner's report, Cody's head and arms were the most severely damaged from the fall. Cody's family and friends were devastated by his death, while Hannah noticed that Jordan seemed relieved. Now that Cody's body had been found, the police would close the investigation. However, the identity of Carmentoni 607 was still unclear. When asked about the message, Jordan introduced them to Tony Stalkup, a friend of Cody's who was a car enthusiast. Although Tony had not seen Cody in a long time, he was willing to let them access Cody's account. However, they could not find the necessary email address, and neither Jordan nor Cody's phone records provided much useful information. As a result, they were forced to contact Google to request the IP address of Carmentoni 607's account. While waiting for more information, the police interviewed Cody's family and friends again. During this process, Kimberly eventually revealed to the police about Jordan's premarital mood swings. Jordan had repeatedly asked Kimberly if she should marry Cody. She also expressed her fears and concerns about having sex with him. Jordan regretted marrying Cody and wished she could end the marriage. Kimberly advised her to have a frank conversation with Cody about her feelings. She texted Kimberly that she was unhappy when she should have been, and was worried that speaking up would hurt Cody. 2 days before Cody went missing, she wrote that he had been aggressive and blunt with her. On July 7th, she planned to talk to him but was afraid of his reaction. After the conversation, she went to Kimberly's house and told him that things were not going well. Cody was very angry and agitated, so she decided to leave so he could calm down. She slept over at her step-parents' house that night. When the police learned of this, Jordan became the prime suspect, and the news from Google arrived at the same time. The Google results confirmed that the Carmentoni 607 email address had been created on Jordan's stepfather's computer. A brief interview with Jordan's family members identified Jordan as the email's creator, but this was not enough to convict her. However, Cody and Jordan's cell phone records helped the police gather evidence. Cell towers indicated that they had been in Glacier National Park the night Cody went missing. Furthermore, surveillance cameras had also captured the couple entering Glacier National Park at 9:17 p.m., contradicting Jordan's claim that she was not with her husband that night. Now only Jordan knows the answer. When the police called Jordan in to present evidence, she broke down. She finally told the detective her testimony of what had happened. She said she confessed her feelings about the marriage to Cody, and they had a big fight. As a result, the two decided to travel to Glacier National Park and headed for the loop. She explained that she pushed Cody and he fell. She said she felt pressured and angry. Her story ended without a clear confession, but hinted at the blindfold incident. Jordan claimed that Cody's death was accidental and that she had not planned the attack. When asked about the plan, she replied that she had no intention of killing Cody. However, she admitted that in a situation full of strong emotions and anxiety, she took the action of pushing Cody off the cliff without any prior planning. Specifically, Jordan said that Cody turned his back to her, facing the cliff, and she approached him, using both hands to push him off the cliff. Jordan also admitted to creating a private account and sending messages. In an unexpected turn of events, Jordan was allowed to leave the police station without being charged. However, the police later arrested her at Cody's funeral on July 22nd. There was a rumor that Jordan killed Cody because she wanted to end her marriage. It was assumed that she did not want to back out because she did not want to lose face for herself and her family. If Cody died, she wouldn't have to go through the divorce process. Jordan's behavior at Cody's funeral raised further suspicions, and many began to wonder if Jordan really loved Cody. Jordan faced charges of second-degree murder and making false statements. After reviewing her case, the jury added a more serious charge of premeditated first-degree murder. Her trial commenced on December 9, 2013. From the beginning, the prosecution aggressively challenged Jordan's account. As the trial progressed, her situation became increasingly difficult. The prosecutors scrutinized her story, focusing on key issues such as why she had deceived Cody's friends and family about her involvement and apparent lack of remorse. Cody's family and loved ones provided portraying her as an unfeeling wife who killed her husband to end their marriage. Although her defense team claimed self-defense, the argument was not convincing. Instead, Jordan chose to accept a plea deal. Under the agreement, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for the prosecution dismissing the first-degree murder charge. As a result, she received a 30-year prison sentence with no possibility of parole. Before her sentencing, Jordan tried to take back her guilty plea after learning the prosecution would pursue a more serious charge of premeditated first-degree murder, which could result in a 50-year sentence. U.S. District Judge Donald Malloy then had to decide whether to accept her original plea or grant her a new trial. On December 13, 2013, Jordan Graham received a 30-year, 5-month prison sentence and a $16,917 fine. She will not be eligible for release until she is over 52 years old. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Christy Schoen. Christy Schoen was born on September 3, 1976, in Madrid, Spain, to American parents who served in the United States military. Due to her father's military career, Christy spent her childhood moving between different locations in Europe. Her family eventually settled back in the United States. Christy began school in New Orleans, Louisiana, but her education was moved around frequently due to her father's military career. She briefly attended schools in Texas and Illinois before moving to Latin America, where she lived for several years. Such a nomadic lifestyle had its benefits, as Christy spoke multiple languages from a young age and had the opportunity to experience the cultures and traditions of other countries. However, during her teenage years, she faced challenges integrating into new groups and making friends in new places. This constant change helped her develop exceptional communication skills. As a result, she easily made friends with people from different backgrounds and gained a reputation as a kind, outgoing, and charming young woman. Christy was also an active and healthy person, participating in various sports from a young age, such as gymnastics, swimming, and kickboxing. After graduating, her family eventually settled in Beloit, Mississippi, where her father had retired from the military. This stability helped Christy form lasting friendships and discover new interests, especially cooking. Christy discovered a passion for cooking and spent a lot of time experimenting in the kitchen, creating dishes that were praised by everyone. Her passion for cooking motivated her to pursue further training, and she completed culinary courses to hone her skills. Christy's parents initially envisioned her becoming a professional chef, but she surprised them by showing a natural talent for acting. With a strong passion for the arts, she enrolled in an acting academy and moved to Los Angeles to pursue her dream. Upon arriving in Los Angeles, Christy discovered the many opportunities that were waiting for her. She used her intelligence and determination to establish herself in the industry. Her early experiences included appearing in commercials, performing on stage, and working as an extra or stunt double in major Hollywood productions. One of her first notable roles was a small role in the Terminator series, which required her to perform physically demanding stunts. Despite graduating from the Acting Academy in 2000, Christy has yet to secure any major or memorable roles. Despite her striking looks and obvious talent, she later decided to focus on her cooking and athletic skills. Christy gained widespread recognition after appearing on several popular culinary television shows. Her appearance on the next Food Network Star placed her in the finals, but unfortunately, she did not win due to mixed reviews from the judges for her unique dishes. Despite this, Christy gained attention and built a significant following on social media, where thousands of people follow her life and culinary creations. She actively promotes healthy living, giving advice on proper nutrition and even developing her own exercise routines to maintain good fitness. About a year later, Christy launched a catering company that caters to events and sells prepared food products. What sets her business apart is her focus on healthy eating, with menus featuring her own unique recipes. Christy soon considered taking her business to the next level by starting a farm that grew healthy, sustainable produce. This would allow her to expand her catering services and continue her commitment to healthy eating. Additionally, she began teaching online nutrition courses and pursuing other projects in the field. Christy met Joseph Timothy Codd, also known as JT, in 2012 at a studio in Los Angeles. Joseph was a casting director working on a popular cooking show that Christy wanted to be on. They connected immediately. At the time, Joseph was nearly 7 years older than Christy, had been married before and was in the process of getting divorced. He was captivated by the attractive blonde's beauty and charisma, and he began pursuing her romantically. Christy returned his interest, and they soon began a relationship. As their relationship grew, Joseph shared and supported his partner's ideas, and together they began working on their own farm project. Soon after, the couple decided to leave Los Angeles and move from Sun, California to North Carolina. To fund their new venture, they sold Christy's catering business, and Joseph sold his Hollywood home, using the proceeds to buy a large lot in Lear. Their new property included a spacious home and nearly an acre of land to make their dream a reality. Joseph continued his work with television channels, but switched to working remotely, while Christy focused on growing her blog about healthy living and nutrition. The couple had a very harmonious and loving relationship. After deciding to take their love to the next level, they got married in August 2014 in a lavish ceremony attended by hundreds of guests, including family members, friends, colleagues, neighbors, and fans. The couple was extremely happy and had big plans for their future. Just 3 months after their wedding, Christy became pregnant, and the couple was overjoyed and happy. During an ultrasound scan after the new year, the doctor confirmed that they were having a baby girl. Shortly after, Christy shared the news with her mother over the phone, mentioning that they had chosen the name Skylar for their child. The pregnancy went smoothly and everything seemed to be falling into place. When Christy was 5 months pregnant, troubling events began to occur. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Christy had been keeping her distant parents updated on her well-being through frequent phone calls, sometimes as long as an hour. However, on March 13, 2015, Christy's mother was unable to reach her daughter, but she initially didn't think much of it. The next day, Christy's mother tried to contact her and her husband, Joseph, again, but her calls went unanswered. Her attempts to reach her son-in-law were also unsuccessful. When both phones were turned off on March 15, Christy's mother became increasingly concerned. Since Christy and Joseph's families lived far away, they could not easily verify that everything was okay at their children's home. Therefore, Christy's mother decided to contact Cecily, a trusted friend of her daughter who lived in the area, to have her check the house. When she arrived at Christy's house, the friend noticed that both husband and wife's cars were parked outside, but the front door was locked. Despite knocking and shouting, there was no response. This, combined with the couple's phone being unreachable for 3 days, raised significant suspicion. Cecily saw the couple's dogs locked inside the house through a window, which was unusual as they never left them alone. Cecily walked around the house and discovered that the back door lock had been broken, indicating a possible break-in. She immediately called Christy's mother, who then contacted the police. Upon arrival, footage confirmed that the back door had been broken into and found a disturbance inside indicating someone had been searching for something. Several valuables had been stolen, including a jewelry box belonging to the homeowner and items from a safe that had been broken into in the couple's bedroom. However, there were no signs of a struggle or evidence that the couple had been held or taken by force. The perpetrators had acted very discreetly, leaving no fingerprints or DNA. While relatives held out hope that Joseph, 45, and his wife, Christy, 38, who was 8 months pregnant, were still alive, seasoned police officers were more pessimistic. In the early days of the investigation, police were unable to find any significant evidence or clues. The missing couple, Christy and Joseph, had no enemies or conflicts with anyone else, making it a challenge to reconstruct what happened. The only clue they found was the couple's phones, which had been left at home and last used on March 12. Although the devices ran out of battery the next day, they still had records of incoming calls. Police decided to interview the couple's neighbors to see if anyone had noticed anything unusual recently. That's when an interesting detail emerged. A neighbor who lived across the street reported seeing another local resident, later identified as Robert Jason Owens, 36, throw a large bundle into a dumpster near the couple's home on the morning of March 15th. The neighbor initially thought little of it, but after learning about the couple's disappearance, he decided to share the information with the police. However, by the time the police received the information, the trash had already been taken to the landfill. Before searching the landfill, the police wanted to speak with Robert. After investigating the information, the police learned that he lived in the same neighborhood, knew the couple, and was even considered a close friend of the family. Robert was a handyman who had helped Christy and Joseph when they first moved into their new home. At first, there was nothing suspicious about Robert's relationship with the couple. However, upon further investigation, other locals described Robert as a strange and unpredictable person, raising suspicions about his possible involvement in the couple's disappearance. Robert was called to the police station on March 16th for questioning about the missing couple. Initially, he denied any involvement in the couple's disappearance and claimed to know nothing about the bundle in question. Since he did not confess to anything and there was no solid evidence, there was not enough to charge him. Things changed that evening when police found a large bundle of belongings in a landfill. Inside were items from the missing couple's home. Police also found Robert's fingerprints and DNA on some of the couple's partially burned clothing. A blood-stained blanket and bed sheets from their home were also found in the bundle. This evidence confirmed police suspicions that Christy and Joseph were no longer alive. Those suspicions were dispelled when police searched Robert's home and found charred human remains in his wood stove. This discovery led to Robert being named a suspect in Christy and Joseph's deaths. Despite Robert's initial denials and inconsistent statements, he eventually confessed to the crime after hours of questioning. However, he claimed that the incident was accidental. According to Robert, on the evening of March 12th, he visited Christy and Joseph's home after getting stuck in the mud while trying to avoid hitting a dog with his car. He asked them to help push the car out, and Christy and Joseph agreed. While they were pushing the car, Robert claimed that he accidentally pressed the gas pedal instead of the brake pedal, causing the car to hit and run over the couple. Terrified by what he had done, Robert chose not to report the incident to the police, fearing that he would be charged with intentionally taking their lives. Instead, he attempted to cover up the crime. Robert claimed that he returned to Christy's home through the back door and took a blanket from the bedroom. Using these blankets, he wrapped the bodies of his victims, whom he was not sure were actually dead, and placed them in the back of his pickup truck. He then drove the bodies back to his home, where he dismembered them with a saw and a hatchet in the bathroom. To dispose of the remains, Robert burned the body parts piece by piece on his stove. However, instead of burning the victims' blood-soaked clothing and personal belongings, he packed them into a garbage bag and threw them in the trash, assuming they would end up in a landfill and never be found. After disposing of the bodies, Robert broke into Christy's home himself, stealing money and valuables to create the appearance of a burglary. Robert's brutal treatment of the victims' bodies, as well as his unsettling calmness in describing the incident, shocked even experienced police officers. Police discovered a saw and an axe at his home, both covered in blood, skin, and bone fragments from the deceased. What was particularly shocking was that Robert made no attempt to clean or conceal the tools of his crime, believing that he had nothing to do with the crime scene, having avoided leaving any evidence at the victim's home. A forensic analysis confirmed that bone fragments discovered in Robert's kitchen matched the DNA of the missing couple, prompting law enforcement to investigate further into the suspect's past. Robert Owens, a loner, was unmarried and had no children. He also kept his distance from his relatives. In 2000, Robert moved out of his previous home in Asheville, North Carolina, to settle on a newly purchased lot in Lewiston, where he later built a house. As police investigated further, they found a connection between Robert and an unsolved crime that had occurred 15 years earlier in Asheville. The case involved the unexplained disappearance of Zeb Wayne Quinn, an 18-year-old man who had been Robert's childhood friend. At the time of his disappearance, Zeb was a military trainee and a part-time employee at Walmart, living near Robert. On January 2, 2000, Zeb met Robert after his shift ended, and they planned to drive to Lewiston to buy a new car. However, Zeb never returned home. A few days later, his Mazda protege was discovered in another part of town, parked with the headlights on. A heart was drawn on the window in red lipstick. Although the car was recovered, Zeb was never found, and the car was also damaged and scratched with paint marks from another car. The last person to see Zeb was Robert, and his car also showed signs of damage. Notably, the scratches on Robert's car contained paint particles from Zeb's car. Robert told a strange and unbelievable story. As soon as they walked towards Lewiston, Zeb blinked at Robert to stop. Zeb said he had received a message on his pager and needed to use a public phone urgently. He asked Robert to wait and drove to the nearest gas station but returned after 10 minutes. Zeb appeared panicked, said their plans had changed, and drove off in an unknown direction, in the process crashing into Robert's car. It was also discovered that Zeb, who was romantically involved with a woman named Misty Taylor, whose ex-boyfriend, Wesley Smith, had threatened Zeb with harm if he did not stop seeing Misty Taylor. Wesley and Robert were questioned in the case, but due to lack of evidence, all three were released. Additionally, Misty and Wesley had alibis, while Robert did not. After investigation, a large sum of money and a pager were missing from Zeb's car. Police suspected the pager might be a false lead, and there was never any evidence that the message was sent. A phone call was made to Walmart the day after Zeb went missing from the Volvo plant where Robert worked, saying that Zeb would be out sick for a few days. However, the voice on the phone sounded strange to Zeb's coworkers. Despite further investigation, no new evidence or witnesses were found, leaving the case unsolved and Zeb listed as missing. 15 years later, Robert was again questioned as a suspect in Zeb's disappearance. The Zeb Wayne Quinn case was reopened in June 2015, but hopes of finding new information were low. When questioned again, Robert repeated the story he told in 2000, without providing any new clues. However, the police decided to conduct a thorough search of his property. The investigation led them to an unexpected discovery: a walled-off cavity inside a detached concrete slab at Robert's home. Inside, they found small, heavily charred human bone fragments, but unfortunately the remains were too damaged for DNA analysis to definitively determine whether they belonged to the missing Zeb. Interviews with a neighbor revealed new information that helped shed some light on the situation. An elderly man who lived nearby recalled a strange incident that occurred in January 2000. At the time, Robert had just purchased the land and was starting to build his house. One evening, Robert lit a fire that emitted a strong odor. The smell was so nauseating that it blew toward the neighbor, making him nearly sick. The neighbor even approached Robert to express his concerns about the smell. Shortly after the incident, the fire pit was filled with concrete, which seemed unusual. Robert mentioned that he had plans to build a small fountain at that location, but he never carried out the plan. The neighbor forgot about the incident until 15 years later, when the police came to the house. Eventually, Robert confessed to participating in a crime and told a new story. According to Robert, his uncle, Walter Owens, was the one who killed Zeb. Walter had been hired by Wesley Smith. Wesley apparently still had feelings for Misty, Zeb's girlfriend, and wanted to get rid of Zeb. Robert claimed that he was unaware of his uncle's plans and was only told to take Zeb to a secluded location. When they reached a wooded area, Robert's uncle ordered them to stop the car and forced Zeb to do so. When Zeb got out of the car, Walter shot and killed him quietly. After the murder, Walter instructed Robert to help him cut up Zeb's body, package it, and then burn it in Robert's yard that night. The body was then encased in concrete. Walter Owens could not be questioned, as he had died several years before Robert's chilling confession. Furthermore, no evidence was found at the crime scene, and Robert's story was not confirmed. Robert initially faced serious charges, including first-degree murder in the deaths of Joseph Timothy Codd and his wife Christy Schoen, fetal homicide, dismemberment, concealment of evidence, burglary, and robbery. These charges could have resulted in the death penalty. However, it was discovered that Robert had a long history of struggling with depression and psychosis, for which he was taking strong medication. His attorney used this information as the basis for his defense. In 2017, Robert Jason Owens accepted a plea deal, admitting to murder in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. As a result, he was convicted of second-degree manslaughter, dismemberment and burning of a body, burglary, and robbery. In total, he was sentenced to 59 years in prison. In 2022, Robert entered into another plea deal with the police, this time in connection with the case of Zeb Wayne Quinn. However, he only admitted to complicity in the murder and assisting in concealing evidence of the crime. He was sentenced to an additional 12 years in prison, on top of his existing 59-year sentence. During his sentencing hearing, Robert addressed the court and begged forgiveness from the victims' families. Despite his earlier admissions, Robert maintained that the killings were accidental rather than intentional. He blamed his mental health and the strong medication he was taking for impairing his judgment. The victims' families were not convinced by his claims of inadvertence. They refused to accept that the killings were accidental and instead believed that Robert had acted deliberately and with selfish motives. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Wilma Anderson. Wilma Anderson was born to Linda and Marcus Anderson after her parents divorced. Wilma moved in with her older sister Emily. Despite this difficult situation, Wilma's mother remained closely involved in her life. According to her mother Linda, Wilma was an active and ambitious girl who loved to socialize with people. She loved social media, often sharing photos of her life on Facebook, and enjoyed every opportunity to be captured in photos. At the age of 15, Wilma met Tishko Ahmed Shirzad, 20, in Sweden. Wilma's mother was concerned about her daughter dating someone older, but she trusted Wilma's choice and eventually accepted their relationship. Tishko, who is originally from Iraq, moved to Sweden at the age of 8 to live with her father and stepmother. He became a Swedish citizen in 2014 and eventually found a job in the care industry after completing his studies in 2018. Wilma and Tishko's relationship took a significant step forward when they moved in together in Uddevalla, Sweden. At first, things went smoothly, but over time, their relationship changed and became increasingly troubled. Tishko began to become more controlling, which Wilma's mother noticed, a change in her daughter's behavior during the 2 years Wilma lived with Tishko. Wilma often spoke to her sister Emily about the problems she was having with Tishko. On November 14, 2019, Wilma spoke to Emily on the phone when she went to Tishko's apartment to collect her belongings. During the call, Wilma expressed her intention to end her relationship with Tishko, citing his excessive control over her life. She felt suffocated by his behavior, dictating what she wore, where she went, who she saw, and even how she applied her makeup. Feeling suffocated by his domineering and abusive behavior, she had had enough and just wanted it to end. When Tishko returned home from work, Wilma ended the call. Emily then tried to contact Wilma, but she was unable to reach her. The next day, November 15th, Wilma missed a scheduled dentist appointment. 2 days later, on November 17th, Wilma's parents visited the apartment she shared with her boyfriend. After knocking on the door, a moment later, the door slowly opened and they saw Tishko. Linda was worried and asked Tishko where Wilma was. Tishko told them that he and Wilma had broken up and that she had left after packing her things. He claimed that he did not know where she was and did not expect to see her again. Linda and her husband went into the apartment to try to find out more information by talking to Tishko. Tishko told them what had happened that night, saying that he and Wilma had gotten into a big argument when he got home from work at 5:30 p.m., which ended with Wilma leaving him. Wilma's parents were not too concerned about her absence at first, as her relationship with Tishko was often argumentative and unstable. However, Wilma's sister, Emily, became increasingly concerned and turned to Facebook for help. In her post, Emily explained that Wilma had been missing since November 14th and had not contacted her family, which was unusual for her. Emily described Wilma as being 165 centimeters tall with black hair with blonde highlights. She stressed that this disappearance was out of character for Wilma and expressed her deep concern for her sister's safety. The police were involved, taking a report and starting to collect statements from family and friends. Their goal was to reconstruct her recent activities and interactions. They interviewed those who had last seen or spoken to her. Linda and Emily confirmed that they had not had contact with Wilma since November 14th, noting that their attempts to call her had gone unanswered. A search party was organized, combining the efforts of the police with those of her friends and family, using dogs and drone technology to scan inaccessible areas for any traces. When police questioned Tishko, he denied knowing where Wilma was and said he had not heard from her recently. By Sunday, November 17th, 3 days after Wilma went missing, there was still no sign of her. This was especially worrying because Wilma, who posted frequently on social media, had been completely inactive for an unusually long period of time. The situation became more urgent, prompting some 5,000 people to join the search for her. Police continued to question Tishko, seeking more information, but he maintained that he had no knowledge of Wilma's whereabouts. He claimed that after they broke up, she had moved on to someone else. However, there was no evidence to support this, leaving her loved ones confused and worried. At the same time, Wilma's family revealed a heartbreaking story to the police, lamenting how their daughter's life had taken a drastic turn since she became involved with Tishko, creating a bleak contrast to her once vibrant and sociable self. Linda revealed that Tishko had complete control over her, constantly telling her what to do and monitoring her every move. Emily shared some disturbing information that Wilma had told her. It was clear that Tishko had become violent in their relationship. Despite the abuse, Wilma still had strong feelings for Tishko. Tishko's level of control was so extreme that he even attached a GPS tracking device to Wilma's phone, allowing him to know her location at all times. A series of text messages between Wilma and Tishko revealed a disturbing control in their relationship. An exchange from a previous argument showed that Wilma had asked Tishko to contact her when he felt he could trust her. As part of the investigation, police looked into Tishko's alibi for the time. Tishko claimed he had been in the apartment after returning from work at 5 p.m. To verify this, police tracked Tishko's movements using GPS tracking on his phone. Surveillance footage showed Tishko at the supermarket at 2:30 p.m. on the day Wilma went missing. He returned home from work at 5 p.m. Around 6 p.m., neighbors reported a loud and escalating argument between the couple, louder than their usual disagreements. A concerned neighbor decided to check on them but was met with an unsettling silence as they approached the apartment door. The sudden silence was unnerving, and the neighbor, not knowing what to do, returned to their apartment. Police continued to investigate Wilma's disappearance, carefully analyzing Tishko's activities. They expanded their search to his workplace and company vehicle, requesting forensic analysis. The car's GPS showed that he had been traveling from Thursday, the 14th, to Monday, the 18th. The GPS log showed that he visited clients and returned home during his regular work hours on those days. On the day of the dispute, Tishko's phone showed that he left his apartment at 6:30 p.m. Witnesses saw him walking along the highway, alone and dressed all in black. A motorcyclist described Tishko as deep in thought about something. Tishko was stopped by police and taken home. When questioned, Tishko said he had initially wanted to catch a train, but then changed his mind and walked home. Curiously, the police did not file a report after the encounter. On November 19, 2019, while the investigation was still ongoing, police noticed that he had visible scratches on his forearms. After obtaining a search warrant for his apartment, police found several of Wilma's belongings, including a handbag, jacket, shoes, and eyeglasses. Wilma's mother, Linda, said her daughter always carried the bag with her, making the discovery even more suspicious. Police examined the scene with Blue Star, a high-tech version of luminol. The results revealed ominous bloodstains on the walls and floors throughout the apartment, suggesting a violent struggle. As police reconstructed the events, a chilling story began to emerge. Bloodstains stretched from the living room to the bedroom, suggesting something, or someone, had been dragged. Even the bed bore a dark imprint, a haunting shape of a torso highlighted by the bright light of the Blue Star. Police also discovered muscle tissue on a knife and blood splatter on the living room wall. The large amount of blood found at the scene indicated a violent incident, making the possibility of survivors very low. When police searched outside the apartment, they discovered trash bags containing Tishko's bed sheets with blood stains on them. When questioned at the police station, Tishko denied knowing anything about the blood stains and said he would have noticed if there had been more blood in his house. As the search for Wilma continued, more and more people joined in, hoping to find her and provide a glimmer of hope amid the growing tragedy. The apartment where Wilma was last seen became a grim crime scene, but attempts to find her were unsuccessful. On November 28, 2 weeks after Wilma went missing, police brought in sniffer dogs to help search the crime scene. These specially trained dogs can detect the scent of a dead person. When they entered the bedroom, one of the dogs quickly indicated that there was a possibility of a corpse or human remains. The apartment was also filled with a distinct and unpleasant odor. Although the police had searched the bedroom before, they searched thoroughly again, focusing on the area the dogs had marked. They focused on a dresser, which appeared to be just another piece of furniture in the room, but inside the otherwise innocuous dresser was a small travel suitcase, which seemed inconspicuous among the other items in the room. After opening it, they discovered a large object wrapped in kitchen foil inside the suitcase. When they opened the foil, they were met with a horrifying and heartbreaking truth. Wilma's severed head had been carefully wrapped and tied with tape inside the foil. The travel case, containing evidence of Wilma's horrific events, was sent to the Gothenburg Forensic Laboratory for further examination. A detailed examination revealed Tishko's fingerprints, which linked him to the heinous act. The investigation revealed the shocking brutality of the crime. Although pathologists were unable to determine Wilma's exact cause of death, they discovered severe injuries to her head and eyes caused by blunt force trauma. The decapitation had also caused further head injuries. Wilma's family was devastated by her news. Her mother, Linda, joined the search efforts for the rest of Wilma's body. The family was confronted with horrifying details of the case, including evidence found on the walls of the apartment. It became clear that Wilma's final moments may have taken place in the living room, where she was violently attacked. A severe blow to the head ended her life, leaving a haunting reminder of the violence. Swedish police filed a report detailing Tishko's denial of Wilma's murder, strongly asserting his innocence. Despite Tishko's claims, police had enough evidence to charge him with the crime and his trial was set for May 2020. However, Wilma's body was not found during the trial. Tishko showed no remorse or emotion throughout the investigation. Reports revealed that he had a disturbing view of his ex-girlfriend, associating her with evil and making bizarre claims that she was working with the Democrats against then-U.S. President Donald Trump. Tishko's bizarre obsession with the president led him to attempt to join Trump's campaign. But his application was rejected due to incomplete records. During his trial, his defense team attempted to argue that he was not guilty by reason of insanity, citing his bizarre beliefs and statements about Wilma as evidence. However, this defense was unsuccessful. On July 27, 2020, a court found Tishko Ahmed Shirzad, 23, guilty of the murder of 17-year-old Wilma Anderson and sentenced him to life in prison, which was later reduced to 18 years by an appeals court. The inexplicable reduction in sentence stems from the lack of concrete evidence to pinpoint the exact cause of Wilma's death or the course of events since her body was not there, a haunting absence that leaves important questions unanswered, hindering the pursuit of justice. In 2020, Wilma's funeral marked the sad end to her story, causing immense pain for her family. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Grace Mill Lane. Grace Emmy Rose Mill Lane was born on December 2, 1996, in Wickford, Essex, to Gillian and David Mill Lane. She is the youngest of 3 siblings and is known as a loving, outgoing, fun-loving, family-oriented, creative, and artistic girl. The family is very close, so Grace keeps in touch with her siblings and parents every day, even while studying advertising and marketing at Lincoln University, where she is living away from home. In 2018, 21-year-old Grace Mill Lane graduated with a BA in advertising and marketing. Like many young people her age, Grace decided to take a year off before settling down in her career to celebrate the completion of her university degree. She chose to take a year off to travel around South America before going to New Zealand to tour. In October 2018, Grace embarked on a 10-month solo adventure. First, she traveled to Peru. Then, on November 19th, Grace arrived in New Zealand and checked into the base backpackers hostel in Auckland, preparing for a 2-week stay on the North Island. During her time in New Zealand, Grace met a 28-year-old man named Jesse Kempson, whom she had matched with on Tinder. Jesse was born on December 28, 1991, in Lower Hutt, New Zealand. He grew up in Wellington. As a child, his parents divorced, and he was raised by his grandparents for a time. As a teenager, he moved to Australia with his mother. However, in 2016, he returned to New Zealand and lived in a hostel in Wellington. Little did Grace know that Jesse had a dark side. He was known to be very charismatic, using his charm to manipulate others. Jesse struggled to keep a job or a place to live for long due to his constant lying. On one occasion, he lied to his former landlord, claiming to be a newly signed professional baseball player with the New Zealand national baseball team, the Black Sox. He pretended that his contract money would soon be transferred to pay rent. This deception lasted for 2 months until the landlord confirmed with Black Sox management that they had no idea who he was. Unfortunately, the landlord also learned that Jesse had run away without warning, costing him over $1,700. On multiple occasions, Jesse claimed to have a bachelor's degree in international law, that he came from a millionaire family wanting to buy a top restaurant in Auckland, and that he had connections in the New Zealand Immigration Department, among other lies. However, the truth is that Jesse is simply a delusional person, only able to impress others with his wild fabrications. His former roommates at Green Lane found him creepy and untrustworthy before he moved into City Life apartments. A woman he lived with claimed that he stole money from her house and then ran away. This cost the landlord at City Life thousands of dollars after Jesse lied about receiving a monthly salary and not paying rent. Jesse is a mystery to many. He often lies and frequently gets away with it. Back in the hostel where Grace was staying, she was happily conversing with Jesse. She was charmed by Jesse, even sending a text to her close friend Anna back home, telling her that she clicked with this guy. As her 22nd birthday was the next day, she decided to meet Jesse, who lived nearby, to get to know him better. On the day they were supposed to meet, Grace was preparing for her big party, feeling excited and optimistic about the evening ahead. She left the base backpackers hostel in Auckland at 6 p.m. and walked into the city center in a black dress, holding a small handbag, unaware that she was about to encounter a tragic event. The evening went off without a hitch as they went to a local bar and left together around 9:30 p.m. The next day was Grace's 22nd birthday, and her family and friends tried to contact her to congratulate her, but Grace did not respond, causing concern and panic among her family members. Grace had kept her family updated about her trip, providing them with details and photos. However, her family contacted Auckland police and reported Grace missing. Initially, detectives did not suspect Grace of any wrongdoing. They knew that Grace had not returned to her hostel on the night of December 1st and thought she might be staying with some new friends. They quickly searched for Grace on the night of her disappearance, using CCTV cameras across the city, and identified the mystery man with whom Grace had been seen that night as Jesse. That evening, Jesse met Grace. Before the appointment, he had gone to a local bar called the Bluestone Room, which was next to the City Life Hotel where he was staying. About half an hour before meeting Grace, Jesse was seen drinking 4 beers there, a lone figure in a pub further down Mill Lane. Meanwhile, Grace was waiting at the foot of the Sky Tower, where they had agreed to meet. This shows her anticipation of possibly starting a romantic relationship during the holiday. The Sky Tower is one of the most recognizable icons of New Zealand's largest city, dominating the skyline and serving as the focal point for many events. Most importantly, it is a public place where Grace would feel safer meeting someone. When Jesse arrived, the two recognized each other immediately. He hugged her as she smiled and walked toward him. The first place they visited was a burger restaurant and bar located on the first floor of the Sky City complex. During their time in Sky City, their every move was recorded by cameras. They were recorded as they went up the escalator to Andy's Burger and Bar, where they ordered cocktails and then sat together at a table to chat. About an hour and a half later, they left the bar and went to a nearby restaurant called the Mexican Cafe. After drinking 2 margaritas and a pitcher of sangria, they left the restaurant and went to the Bluestone Room, where Jesse had been drinking alone earlier. At 8:40 p.m., Jesse pulled Grace close to him and kissed her for about a second. In the next scene, they continued to kiss. Jesse then left, and Grace checked her phone, sending a final text message to her friend Anna. Grace then also left. Jesse used Grace's phone to post a message on her Facebook profile, saying she was beautiful and radiant. After around 9:30 p.m., the footage shows them leaving from the other side and going to the Mill Lane lobby of the City Life Hotel, then entering the elevator. Jesse searched for his key card as they headed toward room 308. It is unclear exactly what happened in room 308 after they arrived. However, by around 1:30 a.m., Grace had died in her room. It was confirmed that Grace never left the building, and Jesse did not call emergency services or any other assistance when she died. After Grace died, Jesse conducted several internet searches that demonstrated he was not only unconcerned about her death but was actively planning to cover it up. The next morning, after Grace had died in room 308, the man messaged another woman he had met on Tinder, trying to arrange a date for later that day. He was then caught on CCTV moving from his room to an entertainment outlet to buy a suitcase, then to a supermarket to buy some toiletries. He subsequently rented a red Toyota, and while Grace was still lying dead in the hotel room, he went out in the afternoon to meet the woman he had messaged earlier that day at a bar called The Dry in the upscale Auckland suburb of Ponsonby. The woman, who was a former reporter, appeared calm when she met Jesse at The Dry. During their conversation, he mentioned that all his friends were police officers and that a close friend was about to move to New Zealand to become a prosecutor. As they discussed a murder case she had worked on, he commented that it was a shame men could make mistakes and face long sentences. He then went on to talk about a man who had asked his girlfriend to have sex in a rough manner, which resulted in her death, making the woman feel uncomfortable. Jesse continued to lie throughout the conversation, making her increasingly uneasy. When she left the bar, although she felt very nervous, Jesse later texted her asking for another date, but she declined. After he returned to his room at around 5:45 p.m. on December 2nd, he rented a carpet cleaning device called the Rug Doctor to clean the carpet, under the pretext of removing red wine stains. After parking his rental car outside the hotel, he took a cart from the front desk, went upstairs, and returned with a cart carrying 2 large suitcases, one of which was identical to the one he had purchased earlier. He loaded the suitcases onto the cart and drove to a nearby parking lot. The silver suitcase contained Grace's body, while the second suitcase served as a cover to avoid suspicion. Throughout the day, surveillance cameras recorded him changing his clothes several times. Early the next morning, around 6:15 a.m., Jesse left the hotel and drove away, stopping only to buy a shovel at a store in the suburb. B.S. During this time, Grace's parents became concerned because she did not respond to their birthday greetings. 3 days later, Grace's parents reported her missing, and a massive search was launched. On December 7, 2018, Grace's father, David Millane, arrived in New Zealand and made an emotional appeal for any information regarding his daughter's disappearance. Jesse was questioned as a suspect individual after Grace's mother discovered a message he had left on her Facebook page at 9:29 p.m. on December 1st, just 11 minutes before they left the Bluestone room and went to his room. Detective Diana Levinson first questioned Jesse. He claimed that he had met Grace and parted ways with her at 10 p.m. on Saturday, which he stated was the last time he had seen her. However, detectives obtained CCTV footage from the hotel, proving that he had lied. During his second interview, he had no choice but to admit to killing Grace. However, he claimed that she had died accidentally during sex after he asking him to strangle her in an attempt to enhance their experience. Following the questioning, he was arrested, and police took Grace's body to the hospital. Grace's body was found around 4 p.m. on December 9th and buried on Scenic Drive in Waitakere Ranges Regional Park. A post-mortem examination was conducted in relation to Grace's death. It found that Grace had been strangled and had bruises on her body, indicating that she had been restrained. The murder trial took place in Auckland on November 4, 2019. Jesse attempted to explain Grace's death as an accident following a fight that went wrong, but the jury rejected his claim and found him guilty. Jesse, aged 28, was convicted of murder on November 22, 2019. During his trial, he was described as a man whose behavior was so pathological that some of the women he met or communicated with on Tinder felt very uncomfortable. It was later discovered that, before meeting Grace, he had taken another British tourist on a Tinder date and brought her to his hotel room in Auckland 8 months earlier. At the age of 21, Jesse sexually assaulted a tourist. When she refused to have sex with him, she cried and froze in fear. She kept the attack a secret until she recognized Jesse from media reports on the day he was charged with Grace's murder. A woman who had been communicating with him online became cautious about meeting him. She shared a series of messages in which he detailed his sexual preferences and admitted why he enjoyed them. It is speculated that Jesse's desire to dominate contributed to Grace's death. In a separate trial, he was convicted of assaulting his former partner. For months, he used violence, threatened her with a knife, and forced her to perform humiliating acts after telling her he had been sent by the CIA to kill her. Jesse refused to admit guilt and showed no remorse. On February 21, 2020, Jesse was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for at least 17 years. Grace's story has raised awareness about the importance of safety for travelers, especially young women, when exploring the world. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Rowena Irani. Rowena Irani was born in Karachi, Pakistan, on February 18, 1994. She was the daughter of Tarun and Bam Irani. When Rowena was 10 years old, her family moved to Wichita, Kansas, in search of better opportunities. Her parents made the decision to provide a brighter future for Rowena and her brother, Rashid, in the United States. However, the move was not an easy one. Despite this, Rowena overcame the initial challenges and became a determined, sociable, and compassionate young woman. In 2012, she graduated from Wichita Heights High School and later enrolled at Wichita State University. She's still living at home while pursuing a degree in psychology. Her dream was to earn a master's degree and become a youth counselor. Her mother was very proud of Rowena's hard work and dedication to her studies. From the beginning, the Irani family's sacrifices paid off for their children. In addition to her academic goals, Rowena wanted to serve her community and help other young people reach their full potential. She began working at the Wichita Children's Home, a shelter for abandoned, abused, and emotionally troubled youth. Rowena developed close relationships with the children in her care, demonstrating her admirable ability to empathize and support them. Rowena gently woke the children each morning and made sure to say goodbye to them in the evening. The children looked forward to sharing their daily experiences, no matter how small, with her after school. The CEO highlighted Rowena's attentive listening and genuine empathy for each child. She affirmed that the children deserved to be treated with kindness and understanding. Additionally, Rowena guided the children in setting goals and providing practical strategies to achieve them, demonstrating her dedication to their well-being. Rowena dedicated herself to helping troubled people. With an exceptional academic record as a psychologist, she discovered her happiness in helping others. In May 2016, Rowena ran into Dane Thomas Owens at her brother's wedding. Dane came from a wealthy Kansas family and had joined the United States Army after graduating from high school. Dane was abruptly terminated from her military service due to a severe traumatic brain injury sustained from an explosive device. After being medically discharged, Dane returned to Wichita and enrolled at Kansas State University while continuing her education, like Rowena. Rowena and Dane quickly developed a deep affection for each other. However, there were some worrying signs regarding Dane's possessive behavior, controlling tendencies, and impulsiveness. Rowena's family and friends were concerned that Dane was moving too quickly toward marriage and starting a family, although Rowena seemed hesitant. At 22, Rowena wanted to focus on finishing college before considering a serious commitment like marriage. Her boyfriend's urgency and determination to get married made Rowena feel anxious, and she believed that the relationship was moving too fast. When she asked for independence and time alone early in the relationship, Dane responded with a letter filled with misery and desperation, begging her not to leave him. He desperately stated that he could not live without her and hinted at the possibility of self-harm. Ultimately, she did not end the relationship. Initially, Dane seemed to accept Rowena's views when she stated that she was not ready to get married and start a family. However, after only a week, he began to relentlessly press for an engagement, a wedding, and a future family. His behavior increasingly suggests that he sees Rowena as a target to be conquered rather than treating her as a girlfriend. He seems determined to keep her in a family role rather than supporting her in her academic and career endeavors. This imbalance in the relationship causes Rowena to become extremely anxious and doubtful about their compatibility. Why? In September 2016, Rowena observed an increase in Dane's violent behavior and felt compelled to share her concerns with her brother, Rachael, who was a police officer. Rowena recounted several disturbing incidents, including Dane's boasting about the brutal murders he claimed to have committed while serving in the military, such as killing women and children while deployed in Afghanistan. These revelations left Rowena deeply disturbed. Even more troubling was Dane's admission of his intention to kill a girl he had dated. He confessed that after being dumped, he had become vengeful and unstable, seriously considering murdering his ex. Rachael agreed that Dane posed a real threat and warned that he might commit acts of violence against the girl. On September 23, after a disagreement about ending the relationship, Rowena decided to permanently end her relationship with Dane Owens and cease all contact with him. She blocked his phone number and social media profiles, hoping to avoid the emotionally abusive and disturbing behavior she had previously tolerated. However, instead of accepting Rowena's decision, her ex-boyfriend began plotting his revenge. Although Dane was still recovering from recent shoulder surgery and unable to properly operate a gun, he became emotionally overwhelmed and purchased a .45 caliber handgun on October 3, more than a week after their breakup. Dane arrived at Rowena's home in a stealthy and unexpected manner while the rest of her family was away. Surveillance cameras captured him parking his car away from the Irani family home before approaching in broad daylight. He attempted to conceal the illegal gun by strapping it to his arm, which was in a sling. Dane broke into Rowena's home without her knowledge. Upon encountering her, he shot and killed her without warning. This act of violence and cruelty was not motivated by passion, but rather was a calculated and deliberate act of a pathological person. After brutally attacking Rowena, Dane quickly fled the scene through the rear exit of the house and drove away in a hurry to avoid arrest. Along the way, he stopped to dispose of vital evidence in several ponds throughout the Witchar area, including a pistol magazine and Rowena's cell phone. Meanwhile, Rowena was left alone, severely injured, and bleeding profusely in the house for hours. Around 4 p.m., Rowena's mother, Tarun, finished off work. Tarun was confused because Rowena had not picked her up as usual and was unable to contact her daughter. A short time later, a co-worker of Tarun's drove her home. When Tarun entered the house, she was confronted with a horrifying scene: Rowena lying motionless on the floor, surrounded by blood and with a severe head injury. Tarun frantically called emergency services, but Rowena's injuries were too severe. Rowena's condition became critical after being shot and losing a significant amount of blood. She fought for her life for nearly 24 agonizing hours at Wesley Medical Center while her family remained by her side, hoping for a miracle. However, the worst happened. Rowena passed away on October 4 at the age of 22, ending a promising life in a senseless act of violence. Rowena's family was devastated by her death, but they were determined to find justice. Rachael quickly directed investigators to focus on the person who needed to be investigated: Rowena's ex-boyfriend, Dane Owens. In the final days of her life, Rowena had been subjected to fear and oppression from Dane. Therefore, finding and questioning Dane became a priority for investigators. When arrested and brought to the police station, Dane confessed that he harbored resentment toward Rowena for ending their relationship. During intense questioning, he attempted to explain himself with his version of events. He claimed that Rowena's death was an accident, a blatant lie that was completely inconsistent with the evidence gathered. According to his testimony to investigators, Dane stated that he went to Rowena's home to discuss mending their broken relationship, hoping for a happy ending. He admitted to visiting unannounced and carrying a loaded .45 caliber handgun, but did not explain why he had the weapon. However, Dane claimed that the gun was hidden in his wristband and that he had no intention of threatening or harming Rowena. When Dane entered the home looking for her, he said Rowena suddenly turned the corner, startling him. In a defensive response, due to his PTSD from serving in the military, he alleged that he accidentally fired the gun at Rowena in that moment of panic. He told detectives that he witnessed the moment the bullet accidentally hit Rowena in the head, causing her to fall to the ground. He was so distraught after the accident that he fled the scene and then disposed of the evidence. Although he claimed that the shooting was an accident triggered by his combat experience, detectives believed that was a clumsy lie. There is a strong body of evidence indicating that the murder was a carefully planned and premeditated act committed by Dane seeking revenge. This includes security footage from the crime scene, his confession of approaching Rowena surreptitiously with a loaded gun, his attempts to conceal evidence, and, most notably, the execution-style gunshot wound to the head. In November 2018, Dane Owens finally went to trial to face charges of brutally murdering Rowena after years of frustrating delays. The prosecution presented a strong and compelling case, with a significant amount of direct evidence. They built a narrative that portrayed Dane as controlling and possessive, often resorting to violence when faced with rejections, which ultimately led to Rowena's death. After deliberating for just 3 hours, the jury returned a unanimous verdict, finding Dane guilty of first-degree murder and aggravated burglary. In Kansas, these charges automatically carry a life sentence. Dane was punished for cruelly taking away Rowena's promising life because his own self-esteem was hurt. He will have to wait at least 25 years before he can be considered for parole. However, due to the brutal nature of his crimes, his chances of obtaining parole are slim. He is currently incarcerated in a holding cell at the Hutchinson Correctional Facility in Hutchinson, Kansas, according to official court documents. When we reflect on the tragic events surrounding Rowena Irani, we are confronted with the painful truth about domestic violence and its terrible consequences. Rowena's life was cut short by the actions of someone she loved. We must come together to support victims of domestic violence and hold perpetrators accountable for their actions. Rowena's story serves as an important reminder that love should never be accompanied by fear or violence. We hope that she will be remembered and that her story inspires efforts to build equal, respectful relationships and create a safe world where everyone is valued.